It's 9 o'clock, November 7th, time to call the commission meeting to order. We have the invocation by Pastor Ray Sent. Pastor Sent, are you here? And the Pledge of Allegiance will be by Commissioner Thomas Lowther. Please rise.
Generally, I start with reading something from the good book. This morning, what I had to say, one of the sources will say it all for me. Father God, today we Americans are again going to the polling places to decide who will lead us in our various local and state government, as well as who will lead our nation. The winners will make decisions that will affect us and our families. They will decide what they determine to be the best policies for us. They will impose their will upon us in the passing of laws and the setting of political policy, and we pray that it will be in consonance with your will. I, for one, believe that you helped form this United States of America for your purpose. We, the citizens of this great nation, would be nothing without you, but you without us would still be God. We're not perfect. We've tried to invoke biblical principles of freedom and liberty, fostering good and fighting evil and oppression. Oh God, have us listen now to a portion of what George Washington, who I believe was your appointed father of our nation, had to say to all Americans on September the 17th, 1796, in his farewell speech as our president, and meant to be heard by we the people, now as then. The words of Washington. Of all the dispositions and habits which lead us to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports. In vain would that man claim the tribute of patriotism who should labor to subvert these great pillars of human happiness. These firmest props are the duties of men and citizens. The mere politician, equally with the pious man, ought to respect and cherish them. A volume could not trace all their connections with private and public felicity. Let it be simply asked, where is the security for our property, for reputation, for life? In the sense of religious obligation, desert the oaths, which are the instruments of investigations in courts of justice? Would we do that? Let us with caution indulge the supposition that morality can be maintained without religion. Whatever may be conceded to be the influence or refined education of minds of peculiar structure, reason, and experience both forbid us to expect that national morality can prevail in the exclusion of religious principle. Thank you, George Washington. Why should we vote? In the Bible, which guides our founding fathers, we find these words in the book of James. Anyone then who knows the good he ought to do and doesn't do it, sins. Be with this county commission now as they set aside personal and party lines and have them do what is best for the majority of the people of our great county. Amen.
Amen. Thank you,
Please
Pastor.
join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 4, additions and deletions to the agenda. We have 3. There's an additional backup under item 5B, which is a letter from the city of Fellsmere. Item 7F has a replacement of pages 66 through 70. And 12A, all pages were replaced due to missing items.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion to approve the agenda as amended. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Under proclamations and presentations. Presentation of summary of countywide needs assessment report by MGT of America, Inc. Who would that be?
Hi, my name is Miranda Swanson. I'm the Assistant Director at the Health Department and also a member of the Needs Assessment Subcommittee. In January of 2006, you approved the process to go forward in the contract for the 3rd countywide needs assessment. And in reality, this is actually the first comprehensive countywide needs assessment, everything from cradle to grave for health, social services, and public safety. And I'd like to introduce to you Nina Barrios, our consultant, and Barbara Allen, her associate, and they'll present to us our findings of that needs assessment. Thank you.
Thank you, Miranda. I'm Nina Barrios, representing MGT of America. This is Barbara Allen with SRA Research. What we'd like to do this morning is share with you the kind of an overview of the process of the needs assessment, a little bit about those findings, and an overview of the plan, the implementation plan that has resulted from all of that. This slide just gives you a little background on the two firms, which we'll just leave for your later review. It's there too. The Needs Assessment Coordination Team was a very, very hardworking team of your county residents, a group of your county residents, and we greatly appreciate their commitment to this whole process. I'd especially like to thank Miranda and Karen Deagle for their guidance through all of this. They've stayed with us through nearly a year-long process and provided a great deal of support and work effort. The team included representation from the Council on Aging, the Health Department, the Children's Services Advisory Council, the Sheriff's Department, United Way, the Mental Health Association, and the Indian River County Human Services. So good cross-section of the social services and health community in the county. Our objective was this: to identify the social, health, and public safety needs of Indian River County and develop a guided, comprehensive implementation plan to assist in delivering effective social, health, and public safety services in the future. So the needs assessment gave us a comprehensive basis to look at the issues, and then the implementation plan covers all of these areas. It covered all of the age groups, unlike the former needs assessments that focused particularly on children. This is a quick look at the tasks that we've covered in the last year. The bulk of the time was taken with the needs analysis. As I said, we looked at all the age groups and then gave a report to the needs assessment coordination team. I'll go over how they worked with that report to develop goals, which we then took to a stakeholder meeting, and that group, a much larger group, then developed the implementation plan that I'll give you the overview of in just a second. We present to you today, and then next week there'll be a public rollout of this same information at a countywide meeting. So that's been our process. A little bit of the detail of how the information came together. There were 4 components. First, services inventory. We developed a website where the providers could come in and add more detailed information to what was already available through the 211 database. And I forget the number now, but hundreds of providers that came into this website and provided detail. And that then gives us an electronic database to describe the services that are already available. There was also a telephone survey of county residents and focus groups with providers that Barbara will describe to you. And then the last piece was a collection of a great deal of indicator data from the various sources that are available to us from the state, the Department of Health, FDLE, Department of Children and Families, the Department of Education, and so forth. We pulled in all the existing indicator data to supplement what came from the community, and then compared that to peer counties. And I'll describe that in a little bit more detail. But let me let Barbara tell you about the input that came from the community members.
Okay. Thank you, Nina. It was very important to be able to get the voice of what your residents think and feel and need, and that was done through 2 types of primary research. One was a statistically valid telephone survey that was done in your community. A total of 400 completions were done, which represents a 95% confidence level, which means if you do it over and over again, 95% of the time the results will be plus or minus 5%. There's some numbers up there. We did a lot of dialings, almost 7,600 dialings. However, that may look like a lot. Actually, we had a higher completion rate in this survey, and I think in part it was because the community was involved and the community wanted to participate. Focus groups were also done, and they were held at the United Way, and the focus groups represented 20 different agencies. There were 3 focus groups done. 20 different agencies were represented, as well as leading business people, community leaders. So that tied together not only the voice of what your residents think, but also what your community leaders think and what your agencies need and want. The report is very comprehensive, and obviously we're not going to be going into the whole detail of that, just an overview. There's 5 major sections, as you see outlined. One is on family life and economic stability. Another is on child health and education, which has a lot of data on mental health and substance abuse. The adult health and functioning is also another chapter. In addition, needs of the elderly, disabled adults, safety, and security. Those are the chapters that are in the comprehensive needs assessment. Before I turn this back to Nina, let me just begin to tell you that most Indian River County residents indicated a relatively high level of satisfaction of quality of life in Indian River. With that said, it was also indicated that there is room for improvement and change, particularly some areas that were isolated and mentioned is that there is some need for teens. Respondents in the telephone survey in particular mentioned young children and teens that are in need of some services. Child care was also something that was mentioned, but I'm not going to belabor all of the details that they are in the report, and I will turn this back to Nina.
In addition to the challenges for families and in the economic area, there was another section of the report that focused specifically on child health and education. Indian River County, well, we looked at a wide range of information, and so there was good news in there as well as these challenges. Indian River County does very well on a number of the maternal and child health indicators that I imagine you've been focused on over the years, and so that is the good news. There still were some challenges, though, or some exceptions to that good news, and they included the relatively high rate of births to the older teen mothers, the 15 to 17, still a concern. And then somewhat related to that, births to mothers with less than a high school education, a lower participation than what we'd like in the WIC program, the Women, Infants, and Children Nutrition Program. In the older teens, there was a higher rate of substance abuse. And then for the seriously emotionally disturbed children, some of the outcomes there, that's measured in days in the community, is a mental health outcome measure, that didn't fare as well relative to other counties. School absences seemed relatively high, again, compared to peer counties. And then overall, there was not a good awareness within the community of what the current issues really are. So that was raised also as a concern, just an understanding of the depth of the issues.
Mr. Chairman.
I have a question up here.
Yes. So all of this is based on, when you say relative, it's relative to other counties, and I assume to compare apples to apples, you did it on a per capita basis?
Many of the rates are, yes, some are per 100, per 1,000, per 100,000. That's all explained in the report. It's all rates. For deaths, it's age adjusted and that sort of thing. So they're all adjusted rates. And the comparisons, there were 2, one to the state rate, and I'll show you a little chart that explains this better in a minute, but one comparison was to the state rate, so how Indian River compares statewide, and then to peer counties, 5 peer counties, and they were Charlotte, Citrus, Martin, St. John's, and Santa Rosa.
Mr. Chairman, how did you choose those, or why did you choose those?
They were a decision by the Collective Needs Assessment Coordination Team, and they were chosen for relative size, comparative size, and other indicators, little economics. There were 4 or 5 factors that went into choosing those. No comparison's going to be perfect, and it's always that's why there's 5. So it just gives us that much more. And for to fall into the problem category, it was if Indian River County fared worse, that would be higher or lower, than 3 out of the 5. So that's how we did that. And just generally speaking, the county on all these indicators fared quite favorably relative to the state. So it was getting down to a county-by-county comparison where some of these factors elevated.
And the relatively high means we scored in the bottom 3 counties? Or we scored?
3 out of the 5 did better, yeah. Yeah, that's how we sort of sorted all this out. And I've got a little chart on that might help. So let me get on to that. In the adult area, there were, again, some indicators where the county performed very well. For example, the age-adjusted death rates was better compared to the state and the other counties, but there still were some areas of concern. One was the access to health care, and then there were rates on these illnesses, vaccine-preventable illnesses, TB cases, AIDS cases, and HIV/AIDS deaths. So out of all the health indicators that we looked at, these were the ones that sifted out as not comparing as favorably. And then again, there was not good community awareness of what these issues were. The people on the phone were saying, basically, I'm not sure, when asked what the problems were. In terms of the elderly, the county does well, again, on some indicators. For example, the number of elders living in poverty. The county fared well on that. And through the community surveys, most of the people in this group said that they felt like the county was meeting their needs, that they were doing fairly well. There still were a couple of areas of concern. One was the number living alone who have some risk characteristics, their access to medical care, same as with the adult group, and then the rate with Alzheimer's or with 2 or more disabilities. So those were the areas we focused on for the elderly. For safety and security, overall the crime rate is low. I'm sure you're very familiar with these statistics. And through the community survey, most of the residents indicated that they do feel safe in the areas of the county. In terms of violent crime, that's a relatively low rate. Also, domestic violence and child abuse were low relative to other counties and to the state level, and I would not minimize that. I would celebrate those findings. The areas of concern were the nonviolent crime rate, which is creeping up, the jail population, sort of tracking that. Delinquency referrals are down, but the delinquency commitments to the institutions and then transfers to adult court, those rates are up. So there's a pocket of more serious delinquency offenses, or possibly a change in the view of the courts of those offenses.
We have a question.
As we go through these, are we looking at hard statistics on what is real, or are we getting an opinion or a poll from the 7,000 plus phone calls you made about what they perceive to be real or factual, and in fact may not be based on statistics?
It's both, and where this finding comes from the community survey, I'm indicating that.
Okay, thank you.
I know I'm unloading a lot of information, but I'm trying, when it came from the county, from the telephone survey, I'm trying to note that. And of course, when you have some time, you can go through the report and it'll present that clearly. Most of the information is from the indicator data, which is collected by the state sources and compiled over time. The last item in this group is the rate of crime and violence in the high schools. In this county, there's a no-tolerance policy for these kind of incidents, and there is a very strong focus on reporting these incidents. So sometimes that pushes a number up relative to other counties who may have different policies. But in any case, this was one of the items that we focused on for the planning. This slide tells you what I was trying to say about the comparison. The top row is kind of the good news, where the county compared relatively favorably to either the state or the peer counties. And then the bottom row, particularly the bottom right-hand quadrant, was kind of the bad news bucket. And so the Needs Assessment Coordination Team focused particularly on those. This is how we sorted it all out. There were 80-something indicators that we were looking at, in addition to the community input. So we looked particularly at those 23 indicators that fell into the bottom right and 5 indicators that came out of the community needs. So carrying all, and then the comparison was 3 out of 5 counties. So carrying all that forward, then the Needs Assessment Coordination Team, when I say they worked hard, they really did work hard. They took all this information, which is kind of massive when it comes at you all at one time, and sorted through all of that and identified these 5 goals to carry forward for the rest of the planning. One relates to supports for low-income workers, another for economic growth, the third is related to strengthening families through prevention and early intervention, and the fourth is educational outcome, supports for those, for the educational system, and then the last relates to health outcomes. Altogether they took 55 indicators and moved forward into the planning process using these 5 goals as the foundation. They took these goals to the stakeholder group that met on October 13th. There were 45 or so people from the community that came together to review this information and to develop the plan that had these parts. As you can see, the goals, which I just showed you, they developed measurable objectives, so there'll be some accountability going forward and some ways to monitor. They took the input from the coordination team and developed strategies, implementation strategies, and then worked over the course of a very long day to develop action plans with specific steps and dates and responsibilities to carry each of these strategies out. So on your behalf, they really worked at it. And put together a collection of strategies, and they did one further thing. They categorized the strategies in terms of priority into Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 strategies, so that over the course of the 5-year implementation, there would be some direction on what to do first. If the indicators are a lot of data, all these implementation plans are also a lot. So to give guidance to that, they grouped into Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. And what I'd like to do in the time that's left is just give you a quick look at what fell into the Tier 1 group, the ones that the stakeholder team decided were the most important to focus on at the beginning of this 5-year implementation. First, in terms of family life, there was a focus on improving the child care capacity, the availability, as well as quality, and the after-school opportunities that there are for children in the community. In terms of economic development, they have a strategy to advocate for attainable, affordable housing, to promote employment and workforce training, and to foster economic development through expanded community coalition efforts. So the action plans put some meat on those bones and give specific strategies and actions that can be addressed in the future. In terms of the adult area, the issues there were access to health care, dental services, and obesity prevention and nutrition efforts. So action plans related to each of those areas. Also related to the prevention of the spread of STDs and HIV/AIDS. And then finally, support for adults with chronic mental illness. At this point, you begin to kind of get exhausted with the thought of it all, but that's why you have 5 years and why you have a team. So let me continue. For children, the strategies were to develop a comprehensive health planning approach to increase the community awareness about children's issues, since lack of knowledge was one of the areas of concern, to improve the childcare area, like I mentioned, both in terms of quantity and quality, and to improve the other programs for young children, the health services and transportation and nutrition programs, and those collection of programs. For the teenagers, the older children, the strategies were to work to reduce the rate of school absences, which was too high, to expand programs for adolescents that support the development of healthy behaviors. There's a whole collection of those kinds of support, character development, and types of programs. And then programs for children with serious emotional problems, and then overall to increase the access to drug and alcohol abuse prevention programs that target the older teens. In terms of crime prevention, there were strategies to target the crime and violence in the schools with prevention programs and policies, which you already have done, and to see that each high school has a state-of-the-art safety plan, to take what's there and review that and make those plans state-of-the-art. And then finally, for the elderly, support those with chronic mental illness that are in the elderly and age group, and expand services to those who care for elders with Alzheimer's, and support the elders living alone who have these risk factors with some lifeline support type services. For all of these, the strategy to begin this and to see it through the course of the 5 years is to develop an oversight team to manage this whole process. And so that obviously will cut across all of the categories. So what you have in the end is the Comprehensive Needs Assessment Report, which details all of these indicators and the community information, a 5-year implementation plan, which gives the goals and the strategies, the measurable objectives, and the action plans for all of these strategies. It's 60-something pages, quite detailed for the plan. And it was designed to allow this oversight team to monitor the implementation of this over time. It's a very concrete, although we've been very general today, it's a very concrete plan that the oversight team can take and move forward with. And then you also have the electronic directory of currently available services. So there should be no problem with the coordination team and the other work groups that come out of this wondering what's already available or getting into the duplication of effort thing. That's part of why there was such an extensive collection of current services. So they have quite a bit to build on. The needs assessment information can be used by all the community groups as they do their planning to help everybody take a comprehensive approach, and can also give guidance to the funding decisions that will come up relative to this and to your other issues that come forward. So that's the quick overview of our year's work, and the next step in this process, as I mentioned, is next week, a community meeting on the 16th in the afternoon, where all the community providers, and you as well, and anyone is invited to come and hear this presented a little bit more slowly. And then the work groups will be created, and the process moves forward under the guidance of the county service providers.
Well, thank you for the report. Do we have any questions from the dais? A lot of information. Well, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you
too.
for your time.
Item 5B is a presentation of a request from the City of Vero Beach for permanent appointment to the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council. As a little bit of background, the Treasure Coast Planning Council, we have 4 seats. It covers Palm Beach, St. Lucie, Martin, Indian River, and possibly Okeechobee, I'm not sure. But anyway, we have 4 seats. The county has 4 seats on that board, plus 4 alternates. 2 are filled by the county people. The other 2, one is City of Sebastian, and the 4th seat rotates. We've had a request from the City of Vero Beach to have them a permanent member, I believe. And let me introduce the mayor of Vero Beach.
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Thank you for allowing us to talk to you this morning. As you know, the city of Vero Beach, and along with the county and Fellsmere and Sebastian, have had seats on the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, going back to the time where, Mr. Chairman, when you sat on the board when you worked for the city, and I was your relief, and I sat on the board. And then after that, Vice Mayor Abel has now been sitting on the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, and this year they came up with with their rotation that the city of Vero Beach, excuse me, will be out of voting. We can vote for the next couple of years. And when we were asked about a permanent seat, that we were told that we had to get permission from the county to do so. And back when we sat on the board, most of the interest was in Palm Beach County and moved up to Martin. Now it's St. Lucie and Indian River, and I think it's imperative and it's very important that the Indian River County and Vero Beach be involved with the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council. And I'd like to introduce Vice Mayor Abel. He is now sitting at that seat, and I wish you would consider our request. And I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Tom. Dave?
Thank you, Commissioners. One of the facts that comes out of this is apparently there was a lack of interest because most of the interest was in Palm Beach County and south of here back in 1998. And that's when apparently Sebastian requested a permanent membership and was granted that. And the city of Vero Beach, according to the minutes that I've been able to drag up here, talked about it. There was this concern that maybe it didn't have too much to do with Indian River County. All the action was further south. However, there was interest on the council at that time to maintain a seat. Now, in the last few years, I've given you a schedule from 1996 to 2006, which shows that Vero Beach was represented as a member from 1998 in all but 1 year, 2002, and we find trying to go through the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council records that Fellsmere was a member that year, and there was even no alternate. What we're proposing based upon the new rotational schedule, and where the rotational schedule comes in is hard to figure because there has been no rotation really in the past. So in the new rotational schedule, the city of Vero Beach would only be represented, I think, twice in 10 years. I don't think that's appropriate. I think that we are the county seat. I think that now we are all concerned about what's going on south of us. I've sat with Commissioner Wheeler and Commissioner Lowther on the Regional Planning Council, and I think that we all agree that even though most of the activity is not directly related to us, that I think that all of the activity that is occurring south of us, and now we realize through your joint meetings with other counties that there's activity both sides of us, and we just should be informed. And I think it's worthwhile for us to be represented and to keep as many people as we can informed.
What comes to my mind immediately is that the city is about built out. The council deals with developments of regional impact, and I think you have one going on right now, but what are the chances are you're ever going to need the Regional Planning Council after that?
The issue that concerns me and why I think that the city of Vero Beach and Sebastian and the whole group of municipalities in this county needs to be informed is just because all that growth is taking place. As you're well aware, because of our questions earlier in front of you about the beaches, traffic, where are we going to put the people, we are definitely affected by every bit of growth that's going on in the county. And when you look at all the people that you're hearing about north of us and south of us, and you talk about concurrency, we have a major problem where we're going to put the traffic as it goes through Indian River County. So I think that we have to be informed at the municipal level and at the county level as much as possible. And we are, the city of Vero Beach is the beach, and we are getting, if they can get by the mall on Route 60, I think a lot of people are heading east. So we do have an interest.
Good points, but Sebastian has lots of room to grow, as does Fellsmere, of course, right now. So I think the focus in the county is going to be on those cities more than the city of Vero Beach. But what you said is true. You're affected by whatever happens. Sandra, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My recollection of this, too, is that we did alternate with Fellsmere, and that we opted out. It might have been your turn, because it was when John Tippins was chairman here, and he would come back and say that it's never pertaining to us because
Right.
it's all the problems of South Florida, and it was just a road trip. And I can appreciate that, but we have had history of back and forth, and we opted out one year and just didn't participate. But we want to do this fairly, and I did notice that the governor appointments, we only have one in Indian River County, whereas every other county, Martin County has 2, St. Lucie County has 2, and Palm Beach County has 4. That might be an option, that we get another appointment there. I don't know how that works.
That's my question.
Because we're in the minority there, we need to have more representation. But I'm sort of with Art, we have to look to, but then again, you're the county seat, so you're very important too, the city of Vero Beach. So I don't know exactly how we're going to resolve and solve this.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
My question, just looking at the membership here, we have more members from the county than it appears
Well, every county has 2.
Every county
has
2.
2.
County
but
commissioners.
Right, but I mean, look at the number of representatives from Indian River County under the county. You have Sebastian, right now you have the city of Sebastian and the city of Vero Beach, and then 2 county commissioners. And you go down to Martin County, and I see 3.
But they have 2 from the governor's appointment.
So is it?
I don't know.
That's
That's what
my
my
question. Is I
question
wonder, I mean,
was.
we might be able to solve this pretty simply, but I'm not sure how they make up maybe legal can help me with this. I don't see how they make up the delegates. What's the process? Are they limited by the number per county?
Excuse me, I have the organizational chart, and what they do is membership, voting, and term of office. Indian River County, Martin County, St. Lucie County, as principal member units, shall each be represented by 2 members. Palm Beach County should be represented by 3. In addition to the membership of the counties, Martin County shall be entitled to 1 municipal member. St. Lucie County and Indian River County shall be entitled to 2 municipal members, and Palm Beach County shall be entitled to 5 municipal members, and that has to do with the population. Now, there may be another issue here that could be addressed to the council, in that the population here has increased significantly since 1997 or 8, when this was being determined. But on the other hand, I go back to saying that between Sebastian and Vero Beach, we represent 30% of the population of Indian River County. At what point that may change, then consider somebody else possibly as a regular member or whatever. I'm saying that at this point, I think that we are entitled to and should be a regular member and have the interest to be there.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
if I could say, and having the opportunity of being the chairman of the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council last year, maybe my recommendation is to take this bring it to the board of the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council and throw that out there to them to find out those answers that you're asking. And I know, unfortunately, in the past, it's been Indian River County really never participated, so I think maybe they just begin to push Indian River County away. I can tell you for the last 4 years, I've been active with the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council and have enjoyed a lot of that information pertaining to Palm Beach County and trying to figure out how not to do what they do. And it is extremely interesting. I truly believe, though, that you have the city of Fellsmere and you have the city of Sebastian they're vying on the same thing. So maybe you need to take it to the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council and say, hey, we have some municipalities that all want to be involved. Is there any ways that you can change your bylaws? And I know that they'll probably kick it back to the county, because it's only a county commissioner that's going to be a chairman of the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council.
Right.
So it's your counties that oversee the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council. That would be my recommendation, is to take it back to the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council board, throw that out there, discuss it with Michael Bush, and see if that could be a benefit.
Well, we have a meeting in
Right.
2 weeks, I think, and I could do that. But I think what they're asking in this letter that was sent to the commission is for you to make that decision or approve of the rotational schedule. And I think in '98, there's indication in the minutes that we have in the city that several municipalities opted out of their opportunity to have a seat.
But not Fellsmere or Sebastian.
Not Sebastian, no, they asked for the permanent membership. But some of the others opted out. And you'll notice in the last few years, And as I say, there has been no rotation really in 8 of the last 9 years, and the last 4 years, Indian River Shores has been the alternate. So I don't know how this occurred over the last 4 to 8 or 9 years, but there
Well,
hasn't
probably
been a
due to lack of
rotation.
interest, I would say, that we never had any input from any of those who were not attending. In fact, it was hard for a while to find people who wanted to go to Stewart
Right.
every once a month.
So-
Tom, I think, was the first one I really knew to take any serious interest in it, and I certainly didn't have any, because I felt it was all dealing with Palm Beach. Everything was Palm Beach.
And I didn't.
No, I understand, and that's pretty much in the minutes, but you did in the minutes suggest that you not give up a seat or give up the opportunity.
Well, no, and you've been active, Save, and that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. I don't want to throw the opportunity of Vero Beach not becoming a permanent place there, and I think that can happen if you went to the board of the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council and said, hey, here's the issue. We want to be a permanent part of this, and to answer your question, Commissioner Chairman Newberg, Okeechobee is not a part of that yet, and I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but it could be an opportunity for you all to come forward and say, hey, we are active, we want to be involved, can we do that? Because I think it's in the bylaws of the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council how that's set up.
Right.
And then if they say, yay, it's okay, then they bring it before us and you're in. I think you all do need to be there.
Yeah, I could try
Because you
that.
have been active, and I think you are involved in that, and that needs to happen. So I'm not saying let's not do that, but I think if you bring it back to Michael and say, Michael, I think the county's in favor of doing that, but that we just need to, if we need to expand those services of allowing us to do that, then so be it. And I don't think you'd have a problem with that. They're proud to collect any dues monies that they can.
Okay, if you could give me collective sentiment for me to go to the next meeting down there, then
I'd be glad to give that to you as former chairman.
Yeah, okay.
Wesley, you had a...
Well, no, I was just wondering, I'm assuming that we can't, I'm worried about sliding the other municipalities in the community, and I don't have the answer for that, but is it required that we have 2 representatives from the commission?
Yes, because it's a county organization.
All right.
And I think what can happen is now you have Town of Indian River Shores, you have Town of Orchid. If they want to get involved in it, then so be it. I don't think you're going to find the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council saying, no, we don't want you.
Right.
I think it's a matter of bringing it forward to them, showing them that you are interested, because in the past, they haven't had that much activity, and that's what it's been.
Right, and I'm not interested in citing anybody either.
No,
I'm just
no.
going by the interest I see here.
But I do believe you need to be there, and that's important, as well as any of the other municipalities in Indian River County that want to be a part of that.
I agree. I think Sanders' idea was the best. We need to have one more member, because then City of Vero Beach, the 2 largest cities, would have representation.
Right.
The other member could rotate amongst the smaller cities, and I think that would work pretty well.
Let me see what I can do about that, Art. That's
Yeah.
good.
And we're delighted that, you're wanting
got the
to
drive.
go on.
Thank you very much for your consideration.
Mr. Wheeler?
Yeah, a couple of things. I know going down, everything that's been hashed around is accurate, but also keep in mind, until this is solved, anybody, it's an open meeting, it's welcome, people have an opportunity to talk, and I'm sure that people from our county or other municipalities would go down there and be heard, even if they weren't voting members, that certainly our delegation would listen to them. And also, by not being a member, those individuals have an opportunity to discuss with us in advance where they're coming from and what they would like. And the other thing is I don't know Mr. Hurley.
You don't know?
Oh,
No,
you do.
he's in.
Oh, yeah.
He's in.
He's
Citrus. You
of
know
Hurley's.
him.
You know,
Okay,
How long you been going to the meetings?
2 years.
his
amazing.
brother goes a lot of times.
Yeah, they're both involved in city. Well, Richard.
But the other thing is perhaps, as Sandra mentioned, I think that maybe we get another governor's appointee too, and I would support that, because we are getting bigger, and the DRIs are moving north rapidly.
And just, yes. I want a government appointee.
I wonder if Ellesmere would like to be heard. I see the Ellesmere mayor and manager, if they would like to just add some comment before we move on.
Good morning, Commissioners, County Administrator, County Attorney. We just wanted to make sure that we weren't preempted from participation. We're looking forward to the 07 and 08 years. Those are going to be very important for the city of Ellesmere, because we do have a number of units coming online. We have our DRI that's going to be submitted. And I think there was some lack of interest in the past, but I can assure you that's not the case in the future. We will be participating. I think we've demonstrated, the city of Ellesmere, that is, that we are much more active than we used to be.
Yeah, I can understand.
And that's why I think
Very
it's
well,
important for y'all to be
matter of fact.
involved, yeah.
Okay,
I know you
Sabe, you
appreciate
say
that,
you have a
Commissioner.
meeting coming up. I think you can take our sentiments, or perhaps, when is that meeting?
17th?
17th.
Is it?
That sounds right, yeah.
Perhaps one of us could go to the meeting. Is it down there or up here?
Two of you are going anyway.
Yeah, I'm,
two of them.
Tom
Okay,
and I
well.
are
Okay.
both members, and
I'm an alternate.
Yeah, so
but I'm.
you should have
I'm
two
gonna be
members there to begin with,
Okay.
and then we'll have Sebastian and myself, and if the Fellsmere people want to go, that's fine. I mean, we're all in the same,
Good idea.
We'll definitely plan on
Pocket here.
attending.
You know, you could discuss it, and you have that little city meeting that you all hold together, old COPA. Why don't you all discuss it and come up with a? 'Cause usually- I mean, that's the way to do it, is work it out amongst each other.
And I'm glad you brought that up, Joe. The county's not involved in that now, are they?
No, they told me not to come anymore. I got a letter.
You're welcome to come
You could do that rather than county
It does
back.
right out of there.
that's
I
that
think
little
we started
city
that.
No, you could you all should discuss it. You should discuss it and decide what would be a good way to share that responsibility and communicate back and forth. That'd be a very good thing for your agenda, I think.
I think y'all just formed your own little
More
Treasure
bridges.
Coast County Council.
I said that was an attempt to build more bridges.
Dale Carnegie class is coming out.
Okay, anything further on this subject?
Thanks, sir.
No, I'm fine, thank
Jason?
you.
Thank you, Sabe.
That's good, Joe.
5C, we have a presentation of a proclamation designating November 11, 2006 as Veterans Day. I think I have that right here. Who's here to receive this? I think we have Mr. Wapnick, Mr. Mortarana. Proclamation designating November 11, 2006 as Veterans Day, whereas on May 13, 1928, Congress approved an act designating November 11th as Armistice Day, commemorating the end of World War I and paying tribute to the heroes of that war. And on June 1, 1954, Congress approved an act changing the name of Armistice Day to Veterans Day in order to also pay tribute to the veterans of World War II and veterans of all wars who have contributed so much to the preservation of our nation. Whereas over 18,000 veterans of all wars presently reside in Indian River County, which is host to 22 veteran organizations. And whereas local veterans, individually and collectively as members of veteran organizations, contribute in many ways to the welfare and betterment of the social, cultural, and economic life of Indian River County. And whereas the Indian River County Veterans Council, consisting of representatives from various city and county veteran organizations, annually observe Veterans Day, as well as all patriotic observance days by holding ceremonies at Veterans Memorial Island Sanctuary in Vero Beach. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners, Indian River County, Florida, that November 11, 2006 be designated as Veterans Day in Indian River County, and the Board urges all residents to fly the American flag, to pay tribute to all veterans living and deceased, and to attend Veterans Day services at Veterans Memorial Island Sanctuary on November 11th. May I give this to you?
No,
Okay.
not yet, Art.
Not
Joe Martorano has been with our organization now, the Veterans Council, for quite a few years. And it is our pleasure that Joe was just elected Commander of the Italian-American War Veterans National.
Nationally.
National. So basically, for his swan song to our council, I would like to have Joe accept this proclamation on behalf of the Veterans Council of Indian River County.
Well, that's certainly be my pleasure.
May I just say a couple of words? I just want to express my appreciation in the fact that the President is referring to me. Over the years, it's been my pleasure working with your staff and, of course, with many of you up on a board. Notwithstanding, I am retiring. I think this is my third job since I retired in 1985. And Commissioner Newberger, you will not retire. You're going to retire from this job, but you'll take on another one.
Hopefully.
I say that not philosophically, but we will continue. I will continue being active with the local Veterans Council. I may not be as active as I have been in the past, but it's always a pleasure and an honor coming up here, seeing you gentlemen and ladies in action, and your staff again. I impress upon those who want to hear this that as much as the commissioners make the last decisions, staff prepares them for those decisions, and they have to make decisions before passing on recommendations to you. I've been on both sides of the fence, so to speak, over the years, so I appreciate this opportunity, Commissioners, that you are giving me this proclamation on behalf of the council, and I hope to be sitting in the audience from time to time. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. We appreciated you. Way to go, Joe.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Joe.
I guess that Joe...
around here for quite some time. I even attended his roast.
Where did he get
He was
roasted?
roasted, too.
On Yom Kippur, I know.
I wish we could have his wife here today to sing to us.
Yes.
Actually, Joe is the exception to the rule, because when MacArthur gave his farewell address at West Point, he said that old soldiers never die, they just fade away. God bless Joe, he's 86.
Unreal.
And now he starts a new career as commander of the Italian-American War Veterans National.
National.
So we're so proud. I would like to invite everybody to our ceremony this Saturday. Get there a little earlier. It starts at 10 a.m. For Veterans Day. We have a great program. We have a lot of patriotic music. And one of the interesting things is that both the invocation and the benediction relate to what our country has gone through with the storming of Iwo Jima and also with World War I in Flanders Fields. So I invite everybody to attend. I also ask everyone to support our troops in Iraq and also to support our president, because this is not an easy job. Last month we lost 39, but yet in Detroit there were 35 murders. But you can't equate one with the other because it's still a loss of life and it's still a shame. But we must support our troops and also let this county support us by being there Veterans Day on Veterans Memorial Island Sanctuary. It should be a beautiful day. I checked with the upstairs. The weather will be perfect. Thank you so much. But before I go, Art, I know this is not your swan song, but for
Almost.
many years now, you and I have known each other, whether it had been with the Antique Automobile Car Club or even the time when I was vice president of the Alzheimer Parkinson Support Group. We had a fundraiser, and out at the airport, I was in line, and all of a sudden, who should be there making pancakes on a hot griddle? It was Art. So this is a member of our community who has been with us 12 years in public service and just hasn't been in the front of the cameras, but he's been behind the lines as well. And as Joe said, you don't quit. And I do have a chair open for you on the Veterans Council as a delegate, and I hope you accept it.
Does it pay as well as...
It pays with patriotism and love of country.
I understand.
And that's a bigger reward than dollars, especially with the cost of living today. But this award reads, Public Service Award, presented to Art Newberger, Chairman, Board of County Commissioners, Indian River County, Florida, for 14 years of public service, including serving twice as Mayor, City of Vero Beach, presented by the Veterans Council of Indian River County, Florida. Larry Wapnick, President.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you.
A few years when you bring your governor.
Well, thank you, and thank you to the Veterans Council. It's very appreciated.
May I just add one thing,
Stop.
Your Honor? It's going to be very conspicuous, my absence at Veterans Day, this Veterans Day, notwithstanding our president has invited everyone to attend. I recall when Veterans Day was celebrated, we used to meet up at the school and march down 14th Avenue and meet in back at the Heritage House, and then eventually we ended up at Memorial Island. But in my new position, and I'm not bragging as an individual, but Once anyone becomes a national commander, he is invited to attend very historic events. Two that I will be attending this coming weekend. One is near West Point, where they are dedicating the National Purple Heart Hall of Honor, and that's near the original cantonment of Washington. And the other is I have been invited in my capacity as National Commander, not Joe Martirana, to attend the laying of the wreath by our President at the Tomb of the Unknowns. So if you don't see me there this Veterans Day, you'll know where I am. Thank you.
We'll miss you, Joe.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Thank you, Larry. Very good presentation. 5D, presentation of Cloud Grove project by Florida Conservancy and Development Group, LLC, on our homes. Yes, sir.
Good morning. My name is John Percy. I'm with Gladding Jackson Community Planners, and we're here today on behalf of Florida Conservancy and Development Group. Also here today are Caroline Villanueva, who's our PowerPoint operator right now, and Steve Kaufman, both of whom are with FCDG. Peter Harrison is here with Adams Ranch, and standing beside me is Ernie Cox. Ernie is, I didn't tell Ernie I was going to say this, but he's one of the, if not the leading authority in the state on the state's Rural Land Stewardship Program. And he's also the main author of the Goals, Objectives, and Policies and the Land Development Regulations that were recently adopted in St. Lucie County to cover their participation in the Rural Land Stewardship Program, and specifically the Adams Ranch Cloud Grove Pilot Program. We're here today at the request of your suggestion of your staff to kind of give you an overview of the Rural Lands Stewardship Program, and more particularly to tell you where we are in St. Lucie County now and where we're heading. So we have a very short PowerPoint, and I'm going to let Ernie start it out. Thanks, Ernie.
Good morning again. It's always good to be in Indian River County, and we will very briefly go over a couple of things with the Rural Land Stewardship as has been adopted by St. Lucie County. I expect this will be the first of what will be a number of meetings and workshops over time as we go forward with implementation. But I did want to just touch on the statute, and it's come up recently. I was in Jacksonville at the Public Lands Acquisition Conference and talking about public lands and management. And there's a lot of interest now because of the need to still protect lands of natural resources, agricultural resources, in the face of rising prices and dwindling dollars to buy and manage those lands. So this is essentially an innovative tool created by the legislature to try to protect natural and agricultural lands through an incentive-based program. It arose out of the 2001 Governor's Growth Management Study Commission, and particularly the Rural Land Subcommittee, with a couple of key components. One, maintaining the economic value of rural lands for lending purposes, ownership purposes, and family equity purposes. We've got a lot of families throughout Florida, and particularly in the Treasure Coast region, that have owned their property for many years. But there's no reason that those families can't put that land into their financial and estate planning strategies instead of running in the situation where someone may die and the IRS gets a great deal of those funds. So that was one of the ideas. The second, controlling urban sprawl, protecting ecosystems differently than just purchase, maintaining the viability of Florida's agricultural economy. We hear so much about tourism and construction and development and biotech, all of which are important. However, agriculture is still our #2 economy in the state of Florida, and I hope to have that for many, many years to come. And then finally, protecting the character of rural Florida. Great mention of South Florida, and I always find it interesting that, and I agree with you, Indian River County and the Treasure Coast should never become like Miami-Dade, Broward, or Palm Beach County. And this tool is one that was created by the legislature to try to avoid just that. And so there really are some interesting things happening. The legislature has made some changes since the creation of this program. Originally, you had to have 50,000 acres to do it. They reduced that to 10,000 acres to try to encourage some pilot programs. You may not want to buy $100 worth of wheat. You may want to buy $1 and see if it works, test it. Property owners can now initiate it if they're interested. It is a willing participant program. It's not one that's mandated upon an owner or group of owners. They also announced that you could have a multi-county stewardship. We don't have any of those yet. The St. Lucie County stewardship is only the second one in the entire state. But at some point, there may be some regional planning initiatives. I know some of you served on the Committee for Sustainable Treasure Coast, and that document talks about some more regional cooperation, and I know there's an effort to see if those things might be implemented. Not ready to do it yet, but it may be something that might be useful. There is a DRI exemption in the statute under certain circumstances. I did want to let you know that as to the Cloud Grove project, the program that works in concert with Adams Ranch, the DRI exemption is not going to be utilized. Florida Conservancy Development Group has made a commitment to utilize the DRI process, go through that entire process. In fact, that application has been filed and is beginning into review not only by the regional staff but also by the various counties. Agriculture can generate credit value. There was a big discussion in the legislature a couple years ago about the fact that we do want to promote the environment, but we also want to promote agriculture. We don't want to lose Florida's agricultural heritage and the economic impact of those jobs and businesses. And then finally, the idea of looking at a real long-term vision, minimum of 25 years, but starting to plan not in 5 and 10-year increments, but in 25 and 30 and 40 and 50-year increments. If you think back in Florida and you go back 10 years, you can see changes that you might have wished to do differently. But if you go back 50 years, there's some things I think we would have made some decisions at a statewide and local level that would have resulted in different patterns. We may still have the same number of people, but we might have had them organized differently. And so that's the idea, is to look further into the future. So I just wanted to give you a quick overview of the statute and how it fits. As you all know, and I think we've had a couple of presentations, but this is a pilot program by St. Lucie County. It covers 22,384 acres, and it involves two main properties. The first is Adams Ranch. It's about 16,000 acres of the ranch. And for those that have been out there, you know how much of a resource that is. And Bud Adams and Peter Harrison and Mike and the family have done a great job of taking care of that property since 1937. Cloud Grove is a citrus grove. When we started this program, it was all citrus. Unfortunately, now there's about 2,000 acres of it that's been pushed with canker prior to the program. And it includes a reservoir that's pretty interesting. There was an article in the paper recently that Florida Conservancy and Development Group is working with Audubon of Florida to do some restoration efforts of that reservoir to actually make it much better habitat for wading birds and particularly the endangered snailkite, but to also make it available as a community recreational amenity, kayaking, canoeing, hiking, bird watching, and see if we can integrate that with the creation. So if you look at a regional basis, the idea of a pilot program was we had two willing property owners that said, you know, we're going to try something different that will result ultimately in the protection of the Adams Ranch forever, allow the family to do their financial planning and not have to sell the ranch in order to do so, and then the creation of a new town on Cloud Grove. And John's going to talk a little bit, not so much the details of the town, because we didn't know how much detail you wanted to get into today. That may be a future meeting, discussion, workshop, but really to talk about how that town may impact transportation, and specifically the future connection to Oslo Road, as I know that that interchange at Oslo Road is very important. So we thought John would focus on that Oslo Road and the traffic today. So again, thank you, and as always, if you have any questions, would like us to come back, just give us a call.
Thank you, Ernie. Any questions of Ernie before we go on? Okay.
Thank you, Ernie. And the aerial on the screen now is just kind of zoomed in a little bit on the Cloud Grove property itself. It's bounded in red. The yellow line is the county line, and the Cloud Grove property is everything in red below that yellow line. You can see the turnpike running along the south edge of it, and of course I-95 over to just to the east of it. And I'll come back to this slide in just a second, if we can, yeah. Under the rules of the Rural Lands Program that St. Lucie County has adopted, we're required to be a whole lot of things, and one of the key words in it is self-sustained. And what that means, according to the design principles they've put in place, is that we'll have a mix of uses. There has to be a balance of residential and non-residential uses. In the case of Cloud Grove, it's projected for 12,000 homes, 3.2 million square feet of retail, office, and light industrial employment type uses, along with the necessary supporting civic and public uses that go with that to form a community. The design principles contained in their adopted regulations say that in order to be self-sustaining, you have to have that mix of uses. You also have to have a mix of residential homes, different types of homes, different price ranges of homes, so you can appeal to all income levels and all age groups. It also says you have to have an integrated, connected system of streets within the community so that everybody has a choice, multiple choices, if you will, to get from point A to point B, kind of reducing the congestion on any one segment of roads. And in support of that, you also have to have a very comprehensive bicycle and pedestrian system to give people the choice if they want to walk or bike to work or school or shopping or whatever. They have that available to them. The guidelines also require that the community be transit ready so that as future regional transit systems come along, it can accommodate those systems. It's a long-term endeavor. This is not going to happen overnight by any stretch of the imagination. It's projected to have a 23-year development program over 4 phases with a build-out year of 2032. There's an area in red shown above the county line. That's also owned by FCDG. There are no immediate plans of any kind for development of the property, but what it does do is provide a corridor for a very important connection from Cloud Grove up to Oslo Road. It provides another north-south corridor for that part of the county and provides a connection point for Cloud Grove to Oslo and then ultimately on to the proposed interchange at I-95. The transportation analyses that have been conducted so far indicate that 3 main connection points are going to be needed to properly handle the traffic of Cloud Grove and the rest of the area at the time of full build-out. And those 3 points are first at Indrio Road, the Indrio Road extension that, of course, leads to the existing interchange at I-95. The second is the proposed new interchange at the south end of Cloud Grove with Florida's Turnpike, and the third being the Oslo Road connector that ultimately gets to the proposed interchange at I-95. The transportation numbers so far also show very clearly that the Oslo Road connection is going to have very positive implications for the justification of that proposed interchange at I-95 and Oslo Road. As Ernie said, we are going through the DRI process. We're fairly early in it. We've just submitted a few weeks ago to the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council and to all the required agencies. And that'll be going on, obviously, as you know, for several more months. And we're looking forward, obviously, to working closely with them and the MPO and all the review agencies. Also, within the next couple months, we're going to be preparing the town center plan that's required under the Rural Lands Program. And that will ultimately become part of our stewardship receiving area application that we hope to file in the spring of 2007 with St. Lucie County. And that will start to provide a whole lot more detail than we know today. So there's a lot coming up. We're looking closely with, we're looking forward, to working closely with you all and all the other agencies involved. We very much appreciate the opportunity to have been here today, and we'd hope to have the opportunity to come back and give you periodic updates. And we'd certainly be happy to answer any questions you might have today.
Yes, we have questions. Wesley?
Yes. I like the idea of what you're trying to get accomplished as far as the preservation of the Adams Ranch. I guess really from a personal perspective, what I'd really like to see is Cloud Grove move further south and Adams Ranch move further north. But along those same lines, though, looking at this, we do have an opportunity to do something similar to that. When I say that I'm seeing 1,200 acres in Indian River County that I think would fall well into the stewardship program and take those densities and move them into your Cloud Grove project and set that aside in addition to just the Adams Ranch parcel, and still be able to provide a road that you're looking at. What would be the possibilities of us trying to get that accomplished?
It's a long-term question, but I'll defer it to Steve or Caroline for now. That's
We haven't heard that idea before, Commissioner. It's a very novel one. Right
Sounds
now,
like it's going nowhere fast.
Caroline, you need to press that little button up there so you can be heard. There's a little rocker button.
I'm going to turn this into a village.
There you go.
It was on.
Oh, sorry, I apologize for the public record. Again, we haven't heard that idea before. It is a novel one. Certainly, we can talk with Suntex and Lennar on a higher level to discuss that. But I think the message that we wanted to convey to you all was that there were no development plans for the Indian River County portion of Cloud Grove. Rather, it is more for a connector that you see here in this exhibit. Additionally, perhaps what we do see rather as a long-term use for our property in Indian River County is the material use that could come from the Indian River County portion. In other words, fill dirt for the St. Lucie County portion. Mm-hmm. And what that would imply for the future is more open space in the Indian River County portion.
Yeah, I think I've heard that before. Yeah, I think Gary had his second.
Yeah, that was my question, is the Oslo connection. When you look at where that affects our county, it's all rural land out there with no growth other than some large home sites. And I don't know what the benefit would be to Indian River County to have the connector to Oslo Road. And that's what I'm asking, is what is the benefit to our county to have that connector to Oslo Road?
Is that more of a staff question? Your question for your staff to address?
Good morning. I'm Bob Keating, County Community Development Director. I think you're going to hear tomorrow at the MPO meeting probably the principal benefit of a connection from Cloud Grove to Indian River County. And we do have Jeff Isley here from the consulting firm of Reynolds, Smith & Hills. It's working on both the project development and environmental study, the PD&E for the 6th laning of I-95, and they're working on the IJR interchange justification report for the Oslo interchange. And Jeff can tell you and will tell you tomorrow that with the numbers that they've been getting in running the models and looking at future year development in our county and the number of trips that would be on I-95 and impact a potential interchange, the numbers are not there now without Cloud Grove. With Cloud Grove, the numbers seem to be there that would justify the interchange. And I think the good thing is most of the trips coming to the interchange would just be to get on I-95 to go north and south. Most of them, a very, very small percentage, would be coming into our county, but not a significant number that would really impact the arterial roads in the county. So I think that's the principal benefit.
Okay, well, obviously I'm not a planner, but you'd accomplish the same thing with an interchange. If that's the key to kick that is 25th Street Southwest. But I'd like to see an interchange there, but I don't know that I want to see an interchange there by expanding. And what I see is opening this whole area up and making that more developable. You know what I'm trying to say. In the future. Second question I have, and we'll deal with this at MPO tomorrow, or I'll talk about it then. But the second question is, do you know where yet you're going to put your town center in the Cloud Grove area? Would that be north, south, or where?
Yes, and it's shown on the town or the plan that's included in the DRI. I don't know if you've seen a copy of that yet, but it's generally kind of south central, just above the reservoir.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Okay, yes,
And
Senator.
will that have to be built before the residents arrive?
No, it will not.
Well, after the residents
It will
arrive?
it'll be a phasing thing. You have to have rooftops to justify non-residential uses, and it's going to be a give and take. It's going to be an incremental
So
development.
when would the town center part be completed so they would be able to do their business in the town?
Again, it'll be in phases. So there will be some there for the initial residents. There will be more later as more rooftops are in.
And I heard you say that there would, you didn't anticipate there being really any development in Indian River County, but you said at this point.
Yeah.
And you indicated just land, fill dirt and a road. Can we get that in writing?
Okay, any further questions? Did you want to comment? No?
I really would like to see those densities shift to the south as much as y'all are shifting the densities from the south to the north. I think.
She isn't talking about any densities at all, as I'm hearing this now.
Well, I know, but I mean, there's if that's 1,200 units, there's 120 units. We'd be more than happy to let St. Lucie County have and set that aside for borrow pit, whatever you'd like. I think that'd be very appropriate to still give you the opportunity to build a road in connection with Oslo Road, and I do see a benefit of us getting Oslo Road and the interchange there. I'll tell you what I envision someday is us not having the dump there, and that'd be a perfect opportunity for us to capitalize on some of the spin-off businesses associated with the high-tech industries. And I think that the dump property would be a good vision for us to utilize that for in the future.
Okay, anything further on this item? Okay, well, thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Cox, thank you for coming. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, we have no approval of minutes under item 6. Item 7A, consent agenda. What do we have on consent agenda?
So moved.
I'll second.
Would like to pull one thing, please.
We have a motion and a second. What would you like to pull?
Just for the record, R.
R? Let me go over there and look at R. Okay, we have a motion. Could you modify it to exclude R?
I do.
All in favor of the motion as amended, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. What is it about R, approval of additional meeting room for new county administration building?
Yes, just wanted to update you on this, that we are going to have an additional meeting room for space reasons in our new second building. So if Tom could just enlighten us a little bit on that, please.
Yeah, just to, the background on that, when the first two buildings were initially planned, you may recall that we had the EOC on the second floor in Building 2. Within that area was a significantly large meeting room that really exceeded the size of what you now have here in this building with Conference Room A. When we relocated that facility out to 43rd Street to have a standalone EOC, that left us with a void. We do have a room in Building 1, which is a training room that's approximately 850 square feet. Probably we could maximize that room with approximately 56 people, 20 around a table, and about an additional 36 seating. My understanding is that a number of the meetings are beginning to impact more than that, and so the question came up about providing additional meeting area. Initially, I looked at the second floor of Building 2 because we have about 23,000 square feet of unallocated future growth space in that area. And I did look at the possibility of a fairly large meeting room, something that I think, quite frankly, in the future may be a very desirable asset, somewhat like the auditorium, if you will, at the Sheriff's Department, that could be a multi-purpose facility. However, we wanted to have a meeting room that could facilitate our immediate needs when the building opens. The second floor, that would be a fairly expensive venture. Number two, if we moved in too much haste, we could really kind of mess up the allocation of the future planning of that growth area on the second floor. So I went back and looked at what we might be able to accommodate to match what we now have with Conference Room A. We had the area that was previously going to be occupied by the Supervisor of Elections. That space is a little over 100 square feet more than present conference room A. I think that would more than suffice for the immediate future that we would have a need for. And then as the county looks at needed extra space, I think you've got the second floor at a time and place when you need to deal with that. So we were proposing this. I can tell you that I don't have a cost on that. I will tell you that I believe the cost to be less than $100,000. I suspect it may be closer to 75. We were unable to get a commitment that I could give to you this morning, and what we've asked is to allow us to move forward with that because timing is critical with the building over there, and we'd bring back a change order just as soon as we have that information available to the board.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Frank. Yes, Tom?
Tom, the only question I have, and with it being over in Building 2, will the electronics be able to be set up to where the secretaries are recording these meetings, maybe they just have a DVD that they have to carry back over to Building 1?
Yeah, I think we can take care of any of those technology issues. That shouldn't be a problem. And I would also point out the advantage of that location, too. It's on the ground floor, and it's adjacent to existing restroom facilities. But, yeah, technology should not be an issue in terms of recording or the technology that we'll put in that room.
Thank you, Tom. I move approval. I just wanted to bring you up to date since I'm your liaison to the building, and Tom's done an outstanding job.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, under item 8A, constitutional officers and governmental agencies, Jeffrey K. Barton, Indian River County Clerk of Circuit Court, constitutional officer, financial report for fiscal year 2005-2006. Mr. Barton? Or do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second the motion.
Do we have a check yet, Jeff?
You have the check. It's in the bank.
It's in the bank.
That's better than the mail.
Glad to turn that one over to you.
We have a motion and a second to approve this item. Do you still want to say something?
Just thank you for continued cooperation between you and us.
Well, why don't you tell the public what we're doing here, what we're approving?
You're approving the excess fees that we ended up our budget year with.
You're giving us money back.
I'm giving you back $545,000 in excess fees and unspent money.
Oh, nice. And we already have the check in the bank.
You have the check and it's in the bank.
Okay. Any questions of Mr. Barton? Hearing none, I guess you're ready to vote.
Thank you.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Jeff. B, Kay Clem, Indian River County Supervisor of Elections, Constitutional Officer, Financial Report for fiscal year 2005-2006.
Move approval.
Second. And seconded. Anyone want to discuss this item?
I can't see why.
The audience?
Why wouldn't Kate be here today?
Kay's busy today. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. 8C, David Nolte, Indian River County Property Appraiser, Constitutional Officer, Financial Report for fiscal 2005-2006.
Move approval. Second.
Seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Budget amendment number 4 for year ending September 30th. Item C2.
Move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 8D, Roy Raymond, Indian River County Sheriff, Constitutional Officer, Financial Report for fiscal year 2005-2006.
Move approval.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? If not, do you have a comment?
Harry Hall, Comptroller, Sheriff's Office. Just like to state that we're turning back $746,000.
We'll be glad to accept it.
$746,000. $756.
$756,000 of excess fees.
And is it in the bank, too?
It's in the bank, too. We brought it down a week early.
Taxes should be lower all this.
Thanks, sir. We have a motion?
Yes.
We have a motion?
I moved it and I believe Gary seconded.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And D2 is a budget amendment for year ending September 30th, 2006.
Move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in
Yes.
favor? Yes.
Yeah, what I'm concerned about is what we've done the last 2 years that I was opposed to in '05, and that's approving the sheriff being able to move items from one section of his budget to the other section of his budget. By state law, it's set up into 3 areas, one for salary, one for capital, and one for operating expenses. And by doing this, we're actually budgeting capital items through salaries and operating expenses. And that's last year to the tune of $554,000, and this year to the tune of $1,222,000. And with the $756,000 return, that budget last year was over budgeted by 5.2%. And I think that, and there is nothing for this coming year that's going to allow this to happen in the future, but I know that there's nothing budgeted for capital expenses this year. And that's what I mentioned back when we were talking about the 12% raise, that salaries stay in salaries because we approve it for salaries. But this board has, on 2 occasions, approved that money being moved from one area to the next without any approval of this board. And this is what we've created, is budgeting for capital items, but actually doing it through salaries and operating expenses, and then moving it later without us being aware of it or the public being aware of it until the 11th hour, where they move to this year $1,222,000 out of salaries and out of capital. I'm sorry, out of salaries and out of operating expense into capital. And so,
what is your big problem with moving funds around if they're not you needed here to move them there?
Well, I hate to explain the budgeting process, but the budgeting process, there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is accountability, and we have a fiduciary responsibility to this board to be accountable to the public for the budgets that we approve. And when somebody comes in and says we're going to spend the money here, and then at the end of the year they take all that money and spend it here, and the state law says that there should be those 3 areas and they should be kept separate unless approved by this board. And we're approving it as a blanket rather than as an individual item that when it comes back. And it's not upfront budgeting when you pump $1,222,000 in 2 other areas and then move it over for capital. You could look at it in the sense that, in fact, they over budgeted in salaries last year by $776,000. They over budgeted in capital last year by $445,000, and they under budgeted in capital expenditures. The other was operating, I'm sorry, at $445,000. And then they under budgeted in capital expenditures by $1,222,000. And we should be aware of that, and we should pay attention to that during the year.
Okay, Sheriff is here, and I think he's ready to respond.
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment on that. First of all, when this was approved, a letter was submitted on March 21st to the County Administrator Joe Baird, and this procedure is provided for in Statute 12906 of Florida statutes, allowing the change of categories like that with the approval of either the county finance officer. It really doesn't even require the approval of the county commission. The county finance officer can approve this, but chose to put it before the county commission. We were very upfront about that in our letter, where we stated what we wanted to do would be able to change categories to maximize those dollars and perhaps do some savings by buying vehicles that were available at the end of the fiscal year rather than paying premium price the following year as we got into the next fiscal year. As we all know, prices go up. This also was unanimously, after being presented to the county commission, it was unanimously voted on in the minutes of the April 4 budget. So there was nothing sneaky or unprojected by doing this. All of this money did not come out of salaries. $776,000 of that came out of salaries, and $445,000 came out of transfer from operating expenses. In any time that you have an operation as large as mine, it's impossible to budget exact. We don't know what type of attrition we're going to have. We don't know what type of shortfall or lapsed salaries and money that we may have. There were some things that we were able to do last year, and this was provided to you yesterday, Mr. Wheeler, as to some of the savings that we had in gasoline. Gasoline didn't go quite as high as what it was projected. We only can go by the projections to the best of our ability. We saved $65,000 in telephone, $75,000 in liability of automobile insurance, $100,000 in our jail food when we went to contractual services. So we're staying within our budget. We're not increasing it. We're trying to do wise spending. And even though we spent this money on capital, we were still able to give back that $756,000. And the year before, we gave back $941,000. That money would have been reflected in this year's capital expenditures had it not been utilized so that we could zero out. So it's not like we're doing excessive spending. We're just doing wise spending, trying to get the best dollar that we can. And I think it's a good procedure. It is provided by state law. And I think it would be a big mistake in anyone's budget if they have that opportunity to change that.
Thank you, Sheriff.
I don't disagree with much of what Roy said. I don't necessarily agree that this is good budgeting and a good way to do business. And I didn't accuse Roy of doing anything, or the sheriff of anything sneaky. He was upfront about this. He came and asked, it was this board that approved it.
5-0.
No, well, this one was 5-0. The last one was 4-1 for 05. But the bottom line is, and I made my points in 05 when this board approved it, and I'm not sure what the vote was then, 4-1, I believe. But the bottom line is just like when we do transfers to different areas in the county budget, it comes back to this board for our approval, and it's our responsibility. The other thing is, I believe in reading the law, in order for the financial officer to approve this, there has to be a resolution by the county commission to allow the financial officer to approve it. But the state law states again that the sheriff's budget is in 3 categories: operating, salaries, and capital. And when you come in and inflate the budget, and in this case, this year, the budget was $776,000 that they took out of salaries and put in capital, $445,000 that they took out of operating and put in capital. And I'm simply saying the object of us going through the budget process and looking at these budgets when they come to us is to take a look and see where this money is going to be spent, and it should be spent there. And if it's not spent in that area of the budget, then it should come back to this board for approval, and that's our responsibility under the state constitution and Florida statutes. That's all I'm saying. I wasn't accusing the sheriff of trying to do anything sneaky.
Well, again, this year we have actually, in funding for our salaries, we have funded at less than 100%. And you show me any other constitutional officer or the county who has funded their salaries at less than 100%. We're banking on that attrition that we have seen over the last few years, so that we were able to give that raise. We factored in that attrition rate, gambling that we would continue having that rather than to have an excess in salaries. And again, yes, the guidelines on budgeting, or the procedure set forth for budgeting, is in the 3 categories. However, through the wisdom of the legislature, they also provided in that statute 12906 for the availability to be able to moderate or modify that and do some wise changes later on down the line. We're not asking for more money. If it was a spending spree that we were looking for or something like that, I certainly wouldn't have given back $941,000 one year and $756,000 the next year. This is just, I feel like it's a good procedure. And again, this has to be approved. So
I think, Mr. Chairman, if I can make a comment, Sheriff, I'm looking at this from the outside in. I think there's only one person up here that knows the sheriff's budget, and that's the former sheriff. I think you're in charge of your budget. Do with it what you need to. I don't know what Sheriff Wheeler did when he was sheriff with his budget, but he understands what's going on. So that's probably why he's looking at what to know to look for. You're in charge of your officers. You're in charge of your department. Have at it. The tax collector's in charge of his department. Have at it. I think we're getting nitpicky, Mr. Chairman.
Any further comments? I think we have a motion to approve this item. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
4-1. Thank you for coming, Sheriff.
Thank you.
Let's do one more item before the break. We have item E, 8E, Charles Sembler, Indiana County Tax Collector, Constitutional Officer, Financial Report for fiscal year 2005-6.
Second.
Comments?
Jeff Smith, Assistant Tax Collector. I send regards by Charlie to you all. I'd like to announce that we returned $2,393,000 to the county.
Say that again, $2,000,000?
$2,393,000, and it was wired to you on the 31st, so yes, the money's in the bank.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Any comment?
Good work.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we're going to take a 5 or 10 minute break before we come back for public.
Your Indian River County Commission meeting is in a brief recess. Please stay tuned. The meeting will reconvene in just a moment. Your Indian River County Commission meeting is in a brief recess. Please stay tuned. The meeting will reconvene in just a moment. Your Indian River County Commission meeting is in a brief recess. Please stay tuned. The meeting will reconvene in just a moment. Your Indian River County Commission meeting is in a brief recess. Please stay tuned. The meeting will reconvene in just a moment. Your Indian River County Commission meeting is in a brief recess. Please stay tuned. The meeting will reconvene in just a moment. Your Indian River County Commission meeting is in a brief recess. Please stay tuned. The meeting will reconvene in just a moment. Your Indian River County Commission meeting is in a brief recess. Please stay tuned. The meeting will reconvene in just a moment.
Let's reopen the meeting. It's 10:45. We're up at item 9, which is public items. Public hearings. Oslo Road Property Exchange with Christine Browning.
Morning, Commissioners. Bill DeBrawl on behalf of the County Attorney's Office. This is a pretty straightforward exchange of property between the county and Christine Browning. If you take a look at the Elmo, the property that the county needs to acquire for the Oslo Road Improvement and Expansion Project is noted here in the crosshatch. It's about 2,400 square feet. Mrs. Browning, the owner of the property, has agreed to convey that piece of property, and the county owns the adjacent parcel, so we're going to make her whole by giving her, in turn, another 2,400 square feet plus or minus, and that will supply the necessary right-of-way for the county to proceed with the Oslo Road project. As this is public hearing is required in this matter, it's been advertised twice in the newspaper a week apart. We're asking that you approve this exchange.
Thank you, Mr. Brawl. This is a public hearing. Anyone wish to address this item? Transfer of property on Oslo Road? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Item 9A2 is a public hearing, second public hearing, and adoption of resolution expanding boundaries of the county seat for the office of the Supervisor of Elections.
Good morning, Commissioner. Marion Fell for the Indian River County Attorney's Office. This is the second public hearing to expand the county seat. You had your first public hearing on October 24th, and there was no public comment. You're being asked to expand the county seat so the Supervisor of Elections can have all of her offices in one location. Essentially, you're adding two parcels here. One is the 43rd Avenue complex for the Supervisor of Elections and your Emergency Operations Center. The other is the new jail facility. At the conclusion of this public hearing, you'll be asked to sign approve the ordinance, the resolution, and the county seat will then be expanded.
Thank you. Any questions of Mrs. Fell? None? I'll open the public hearing. This has to do with expanding the county seat to cover the Supervisor of Elections' new office out on 41st and 43rd, I guess it is. Any comments from the public? Hearing none?
Move approval.
Motion to approve this item. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Marion. Item 9B, public discussion items. Request to speak from Glenn Legwin regarding extension of demolition. Mr. Legwin?
Chairman, may I go ahead and ask that Mike O'Hare appear before me, and then I'll appear after him, because I know he has a meeting that he has to go to. Would that be all right, sir?
Is there any problem with that with anyone? No.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. O'Hare, are you speaking about, let's see, item B2, request to speak from Michael O'Hare regarding authorization of the location of facility for homeless in residential neighborhood.
Yeah, and I'm not here to speak on the merits of this. This is a land use decision that staff made, and it's kind of a stealth decision in that there is no public notice of it. The public has not had an opportunity to speak to it. You all have not heard it. The Planning and Zoning Commission has not heard it. But staff has made the determination that location of a homeless facility, residential facility, on 37th Street can occur. And as I say, I'm not going to speak to the merits, and I have an appeal pending on that decision. However, I would ask that this board go ahead and rescind staff's decision until we go through the customary process and give the people who are involved in the decision an opportunity to have their say on whether or not it's an appropriate matter. So I'm here today in behalf of a number of families who are residents on 37th Street and in the immediate area to ask that we go back to ground zero and let us go through the process as is normally the case with land use decisions.
Okay. Can we have a staff report on what this is about?
I think what this is involved is there was a facility that was being used for a particular purpose, and the group that was using it moved to another location, another group moved in, and I think the staff determined that there was a grandfathered non-conforming use. It wouldn't be allowed now, but it was legal when established and could continue to be used unless abandoned. I think whether it was abandoned or some of the issues on the merits that Mr. O'Hare's appeal would go to, but I think the staff makes these decisions every day. Has the use continued? Can it continue to be used for the purpose for which it was originally approved? And there is an appeal procedure. It will go to the Planning and Zoning Commission for a decision. If it can be appealed to the board if anyone's unhappy with that decision. I don't think you really want to get to the merits of the staff's decision.
I thought that grandfathering ended when the occupation ended. Isn't that the way it works? If you had a store or something like that?
Yes, there's certain time periods. If you don't use the structure for that particular use, then it cannot be reestablished. But if it is a continuing use, it can continue. It's considered grandfathered in, even with a change of ownership, if the use stays the same.
Okay.
And these are some of the issues that really,
Mr. Chairman.
I don't think you want to get into all the issues on the staff decision, the opposition's position. You don't have the applicant here, so you're only getting part of the story, and I think it would be proper to let the appeal run its course.
Well, I would have liked to have had that opportunity when the decision was made, too, Bill.
And I think the whole idea, and I can bring this forward too, because unfortunately it is close to me because it's out close to where the Hedines live and the Metzes live, and I obviously have been good friends with both of them, and I have seen this opportunity take place over the last year and a half, and truly this establishment has been abandoned. So I guess what I would like to see done is move forward to have this take its process, deny staff of what their opinion is, and obviously, guys, if you need me to come back on your behalf because I won't be sitting here when it's happened, I'll be glad to do that, because I can tell you, seeing it myself, it has been abandoned. It wasn't one moved out, the other one moved in.
Is that a motion?
And that's a motion.
No,
wait just a minute here.
To go the route of what Mr. O'Hare is talking about.
This is a perfect example, sorry, Mr. O'Hare, but this is a perfect example of no backup material. I don't even have an address here, and you're making a motion and staff hadn't talked to us, and our attorney is saying let the process go forward.
Yeah.
And, I mean, let's just do business as we should do business.
Well, that's my question. Are we circumventing the procedure that we should be going through to evaluate this? And,
no, that's what he's asking us to do.
Yeah, that's what he's asking us to do.
I'll second the motion for discussion.
We don't even know what we're talking about.
Under further discussion, this other entity is beginning to move in.
We don't need a motion if it's going to follow procedure and appeal it to the planning and zoning and...
Yes, but as things stand now, it is a done deal without public participation, and the homeless can start moving in there today. This is a family in a neighborhood of young families, small children. And, they've been blindsided.
See, I don't even know what's going on.
All right, it's the former Alcohope facility on 37th, which, as Tom has mentioned to you, was abandoned. Alcohope signed a lease in 2003 for its current facility on the hospital campus and moved out. They've been gone for a year. Now, it's proposed that the building be used as a facility for homeless residential.
Okay, thank you.
I think
one at a time. Go ahead.
If I can finish my statement, Commissioner Davis, and let you speak, and I'm talking on behalf of, or not on behalf of Commissioner Bow, but unfortunately, I think this is our job as a commissioner. When public comes to us going, "Hey, we've been handcuffed And they know what's going on because it's happening to them. You might not know what's going on, but they're bringing it forward to you to say, hey, these people are moving in. Do you want that to happen next to you?
Give me the background and let me make an intelligent decision. No, he's just now said this after we pulled it out of him. I don't mean that unkindly, but we can't be blindsided up here.
It's not blindsided.
Maybe I could make a suggestion. I don't know when they're going to move in. Maybe staff should do a report on this with all the information and pictures, and do a status report on this, and Mr. O'Hare come back next week. Can we accomplish that with the background, the legal? I think we need to lay this out so that everyone knows all.
Well, I don't know, you've got a process and you're trying to change the process in the middle of the stream. The process is if someone doesn't agree with the community development director's interpretation or decision, it can be appealed to planning and zoning with further appeal to the board. You're just changing all your rules in the middle of the stream, and you don't have any rules anymore.
I got a question, though, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
You may.
Let's assume that they go through the appeal process, which in no doubt would take 6 weeks minimum, and these people are allowed to move in, invest money, set up house, and it makes the decision that much more difficult as to whether or not you're going to allow this or not allow it. Kind of gives them some
Legal standing almost.
Legal standing almost. And if this is something that is appealed, maybe we should just put things in limbo until it is settled.
Just trying to help you, Gary.
And that's all I'm asking for today. I know you're going to want to hear the merits and the pros and the cons, and that's what should have been done at the beginning. But I think if you arrest the procedure, there will be no harm done. We're going back to ground zero, and in the fullness of time, you will have all of the backup material, and you will hear both sides and from the public.
Mr. Chairman, or Mr. Collins, I'd like to look at this. Let's change it from this example. Let's suppose this was a pit, a sand mine, and somebody started digging, and the board changed their mind and then said no. That's the lines that we're trying to go along with this. We have a staff decision that may be appealed to P&Z. P&Z make a decision, and at that point, technically, that sand mine could start. Is that correct?
I don't know what you're talking about.
What I'm trying to figure, I'll slow down. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying, if with this moving, thank you, with this moving forward, are they moving in today?
Let's hear from staff one time. What do you got, Bob?
We don't know a lot of the details. We don't know if they're moving in, how much of it's occupied. We did make the decision about, we did make the nonconformity decision, and we coordinated with the attorney's office when we made that. And that was the decision that Al Cahope had occupied this site, and the site was not abandoned for more than a year when the source moved in or took over, and that was the decision that we made. As I understand it, they have some repair permits for some of the structures on the site right now, and they may be undertaking those repairs. I'm not sure their status as far as moving in and actually doing business there.
I thought Mr. O'Hare said that they left it in 2003?
They signed a lease with the hospital subsidiary in 2003.
They didn't physically move at that time?
No, they moved in 2005.
Okay. Now, tell me about the appeals process. This will go to the P&Z?
That's correct. Mr. O'Hare filed an appeal last week, and the next Planning and Zoning Commission meeting will be in December, and that's when they will hear the appeal, and there's a process to notify, obviously, the property owner as well as adjacent property owners as well. A decision by the Planning and Zoning Commission can then be appealed by any party, affected party, to the Board of County Commissioners.
And when whatever the P&Z says, that's final decision?
No, P&Z decisions can be appealed by any affected party to the Board of County Commissioners.
It comes back here again.
It's likely in this case.
So let me finish. In the meantime, things can go on as normal. Whatever they're doing, they can continue doing, people moving in, things like that.
I'm not sure about the time frame for moving in. There are re-roofing permits that have been issued or issued last month, and I think that activity is going on.
Right. Can they?
I think legally, they are aware, or at least their attorney's aware, that an appeal has been filed. I don't know legally, Will, if they're essentially on notice that an appeal has been filed and they proceed accordingly. That's a decision that I have to make.
They do know that the appeal has been filed, yeah. I guess any investment you make during an appeal period is at your own risk.
Yeah.
Is there an emergency process in the appeals?
No.
No?
No, there is not.
So, Mr. O'Hare, you're asking us to reverse the position of the staff immediately and stop.
I don't think you can reverse the staff's decision. They made a decision. I think perhaps what you're talking about is not issuing a CO for the facility until the appeal is heard.
Well, we don't want it occupied until we have an opportunity to state our case.
Will that be happening as we're reconsidering?
Without a CO.
Well, I don't know what's going on out there. If they're re-roofing it, I don't know if people can occupy the structure while the roof's being put on.
Typically.
No, and I don't know that either, and there's no way anybody could know with what staff has done.
Well, they need a CO before they can move in.
Well, let's, I think that we've got the message but we do have a procedure that we have to follow. Staff cannot, we have a written procedure and we follow it. It's a policy and procedure set by the board. I think we've got the message that we need to move quickly at getting this to the P&Z, follow through the procedure, and then back to the Board of County Commissioners. And we'll try and get a status report on what's being done out there and how, if it can be occupied, we'll get something to the commission, or we'll write an email to the commission and a memo giving us, outlining whether we think there can be a CO and all that other information. It gets a little hard when I know that there's upset neighbors, but we have to follow the procedure we have, and to do it right up here at the podium, I think, is not fair to either party. So we will come back very quickly following the procedure that's in place.
Okay.
If we're going to appeal to the P&Z and they don't meet until December, how are you going to do it quickly?
I'm concerned about the people moving in.
I am too.
In good faith, and then in December, we're going to say, well, now you've got to move out again.
It's like we almost need an injunction of some
Why don't we bring more information back at next Tuesday's meeting and continue to work, try and fast track this as to the status, and maybe I think that's the best we can do, because we have a procedure outlined by the board that we have to follow. It's unfortunate, but that's what we have to do.
All right, but I think they need to be made aware, the people who are conducting the repairs, that it may all go to pieces.
We'll meet with them.
And we probably don't need a motion. Your motion...
There is a motion and a second.
There is a motion. Is there a second?
Yeah.
The motion is again.
I think this is a public hearing?
Not yet.
Okay.
What is your motion?
I think the motion was to either rescind this or stop it, to take it through the regular Board of Appeals or the Planning and Zoning and that whole scenario. My problem is I don't want them to move in or begin to move people in there, and the next thing you know, they might have to move out.
The motion was to rescind the
staff's decision until the Board of Appeals.
I don't want that. I'm going to withdraw my second on that.
That's fine. Then my motion dies for lack of
And I
second.
think we ought to go through the process, and people who are affected need to be made aware of what's happening.
Well, they highly
Don't
are.
move in because it might fall apart. Yes, sir.
Well, two things. I think Sandra had it right. My name's Spencer Simmons Construction. Sandra had it right. You only have one view up here. Staff has looked at it. Now, the whole ideal that this is a homeless shelter, I know the source, and I do work with them a little bit. If this was just a year ago and it was an alcoholic rehab center, and all of a sudden everybody's upset because they're changing hands, I think that's a little absurd, to be quite honest. Now, what the source is doing here is using this facility for people that's fallen through the cracks. They're not alcoholics and vagabonds. Most of this is people that have fallen through the cracks, losing jobs, and they're trying to keep them off the streets. That's what the facility is being used for. And I believe also you do need to have a CO. They can't just move people in, and they're not just going to move people in as they're repairing. But I think Sandra's right here. You're only getting one side here, and once you hear the whole picture and understanding that this facility was an alcoholic treatment center a year and a half ago, and people were moving in back then. Now we need to, as a community, we all want to say, hey, help everybody, but as long as it's not too close to me. And if this place was already set up, a year and a half ago as an alcoholic treatment center, now it's just a place trying to keep people from becoming alcoholics or falling through the cracks and helping them up, we need to support that as a community.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, at present we have no motion, and we're going to proceed according to what our ordinances are.
And you'll bring it back,
We'll bring some information back for the next commission. We'll also we'll research some stuff and get emails and memorandums out so you're aware of what's going on immediately.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Very
O'Hare.
good, thank you.
Okay, now we're back to Mr. Glegwin, request to speak from Glenn regarding extension of demolition.
Good morning. My name is Glenn Legwin. I live at 5900 5th Street Southwest. I would like to begin by saying that you very hastily approved a decision to destroy my greenhouses.
Who was you? Were you speaking of? Me?
Beg your pardon?
Who are you speaking of?
No, I'm talking about the board. I'm looking at the Building Division Interoffice Memorandum dated October 24th, 2006, subject condemnation, demolition, and removal of unsafe structures.
Last week?
Yes, and I did not have an opportunity to speak to you then to ask that we relook at this particular item. Having looked through this document that you did approve, I noticed that the pictures that they've used here to describe or to show you my property were taken almost 7 months ago, and they don't really reflect the appearance or the character of the property at the current time. Now, what I'm asking to have you folks or commission do for me is to allow me to continue restoring these buildings. Now, the hurricane of 2004 and 2005 damaged these buildings, but they're not houses. They're greenhouses. They're pole barns that are designed to use to display plants or to grow plants. They're not something that you're going to live in. They're not something that you're going to be going to the bathroom in. They're just greenhouses. And unfortunately, because of the expansion of the road, the buildings are now very visible to the road. The trees that once blocked the view into my property have been taken down because of the road. So I'm in a situation kind of like a rock in a hard place. I'm being asked to take down some buildings or demolish some buildings, and in this report, they go on to say that the owners were also notified that the board would consider resolutions to demolish the building and impose a lien if they failed to either pull a permit to repair or demolish the structures. They're basically saying that no permit was ever pulled for destruction or the demolition. Now, I went and talked to Buddy personally. I explained to him that the code enforcement was coming after me, mostly because of vehicles that I have on my property or because my grass is too high. But the one that I could not address properly was the one about the buildings. But I did pull a demolition permit, as he recommended, and so by that nature, this document that you've signed is not even accurate. But nevertheless, what I am asking you today is to allow me to continue on with what I'm doing, and I would like to show you some of the pictures of what the property looked like before, which was May 24th, 2006. I have two pictures here. And then the pictures that I have following that will also show you what I have done to date, and so you can see the progress that I've made.
You have a demolition permit for how long now?
You put them on the...
Elmo.
Oh, no, yeah.
You need an extension on your demolition permit. Are you demolishing? Or
Well, actually, after reading over the demolition permit, I thought that the demolition permit was issued for 6 months. I read down here at the bottom that it was only issued for 60 days, and then you're allowed for a 30-day extension. Well,
are we
the option...
Are we getting to the end of that now? The 90
What's that?
days? You just got the permit.
No, sir. The issue date on the permit was 6/15/2006. But the point is, I did not want to demolish the structures. That's the whole point. I mean, that was not my intent. My intent was really to rebuild the structures. And, you know, when you start talking about structures and you're saying that they need to be demolished, I would have a great disagreement with that, because these structures were built less than 20 years ago. They were built with pressure-treated lumber. The only thing I can honestly tell you about these structures is that one of them, which will come down completely, is going to be gone, was pushed over by the hurricane winds. Now, it doesn't take much to restructure them and put them upright again and make them whole. The pictures that you will see that I'm going to give you now will kind of show you what I'm talking about.
Okay, so you got this permit 6 months ago, 5 months ago, apparently.
Yes, sir.
And you still need an extension. How long is it going to take you to?
Well, the point is, now I'm at the point where I need to get a building permit, okay, but I don't really know what I'm getting a building permit for. Is it to restore 5 structures? Is it to restore 2 structures? I mean...
What do you want to do?
Well, one of them needs to come down, but I don't want to take the material to the landfill. There's no reason to take pressure-treated lumber to the landfill. I mean, I'm a nursery operation. Everything that I have in my nursery is recyclable. The only thing that I cannot recycle is, actually, when I think about it, there's basically nothing that I can't recycle. Everything on my property has been recycled in the past. Any wood products, anything of that sort, gets ground up and incorporated either into mulch or to soil.
That's enough going on with that. I'm just curious about when are you going to get it back to where you want it? And how much of an extension do you need to do that? I mean, the hurricanes are 2 years gone now, and your permit is almost 6 months old. So what else?
Well, I'm asking not for a demolition permit, but I want a regular building permit. The church that's to the north of me has had an ongoing building permit for almost 15 years. Now, I don't intend to spend the next 15 years reconstructing this nursery, but what I would like is the opportunity to put them back in and not have this 90-day period over my head where you're going to come in and you're going to bulldoze it down.
I understand.
You're going to charge my property.
Let me ask some questions. Mr. Collins, what's the answer here? Can we get a building permit for him to supersede the demolition permit?
Well, I think the notices that go out say either pull a demolition or a building permit. You have a choice of taking the structure down or rebuilding it. And
so he can go and get a building permit?
I don't see why not. Unless the only thing I can think of is that the time frame may have run to pull the permit, and without an appeal, it goes on the demolition list. That's probably what happened.
Yeah, he could pull a building permit anytime or pull a demolition permit. The existing demolition permit that he has expired. He'd have to pull a new one. But I can tell you, I have personally gotten a number of complaints on this property, and that's one of the reasons that code enforcement action was initiated and the condemnation process was initiated. So I think right now we're in the process of getting bids to do the demolition. It's still going to be at least 30 days before anything's done, so there's an automatic extension of 30 days. But I would suggest that if you contemplate giving an extension, anything beyond that some pretty strict time frames be set, because we haven't seen the problems cured since we did initiate action.
And if he gets a building permit, that allows him how long?
The building permit goes for 6 months, but as long as you get inspections, it can go on indefinitely.
But the inspections have to show some progress.
Correct.
Well, it looks like if you just clean the place up a little bit, that would be progress.
Mrs. Bowden, if you would permit me, I would like to go ahead and show you the cleanup that has already been accomplished. So,
well, I think the answer, Glenn, is just to go ahead and get a building permit and start going to work.
Well, I agree with you, but the thing is, I was following the instructions of Buddy saying that I needed to get a demolition permit. I explained to him that I really didn't want to demolish all of the buildings, but there is one that definitely needs to be demolished. It is going to be taken down. There's no reason for it to be there. So, I mean, you can see the improvement that has been made here. The pictures that were submitted, it shows there was all kinds of debris and things like that in front of the retail center. If you could show the next one, please. The retail center is to the left, and then the building that's immediately next to the retail center is to the right. That's a greenhouse. That one is coming down. It is my intention that as soon as I can to go ahead and bring that down. I'm having to do it by hand, though. There's two of us that are actually working to demolish the structure. This building right here is on the left-hand side. As you could see, there was a whole bunch of weeds and things of that sort in front when they permitted, when they gave you this information. Now it's all been cleaned up. This is these pictures were taken, I believe, about May. Let's see, May, April. This was probably taken around June or July. This picture that you see right here. Again, the main problem that I have right now is just the time factor of being able to take something down by hand.
As I understand, you can go ahead and get a demolition permit. You can go do that. And also a building permit for those buildings you wish to repair.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Is that right? Did I make any mistakes here? Okay.
Now, we're still moving ahead. Are we going to give them an extension on the demolition? We're still moving ahead.
Well, the new demolition permit will take care of that, right? The other one will run out. It's already run out, so we just need a new one.
There's got to be a point. I think there's a point at which, I mean, we want to work with you, Glenn, as much as possible. But as far as having a mockery of the system, I think there's some serious considerations that need to be looked at. But allowing you time. I mean, how much? I think what you're after is how much time can you tell us that you need to get this done?
Well, initially, to try and answer your question as quick as I can and as briefly as I can, I had 5 structures on the property. One of them has been completely removed. It was a shade house. It was the one that was closest to the street. That first picture that I showed you showed what it looked like before the demolition crew came in and did the work. Now, I've already paid roughly $5,000 to have that section demolished, all of the debris taken away, and paid the landfill fees and so forth. Now, when I realized it cost me a little bit more than $5,000 to remove that, if I were going to remove the rest of the structures and pay $5,000, it was going to cost me close to $25,000 to remove all of the structures. Now, I can restore two of the structures for about $10,000 versus $25,000 to demolish them. I would much rather do that. And so to answer Mr. Davis's question, I want to reopen the nursery so that I can make an income. It was my intent to reopen last year, and because of some problems with one of my sons, I wasn't able to do it. But now I'm moving forward, so I expect to have some considerable progress in the next couple of months. Now, if you're asking me what is the actual length of time that I think I need, I would say probably 90 days, maybe 120. But I would like to try and be open and up and running before the end of this year. So I'm saying that at the furthest would be 120 days, but the way the progress is going, we've gotten a lot accomplished in just the last month. So I'm thinking that, you will, if I have to come back before you, you will see a considerable amount of progress.
Mr. Chairman. Go ahead. Bob, when's the last time somebody from code enforcement went out and looked at the property? Any idea?
I think it was pretty recently. I think it was in the past month or so.
Okay.
I don't think photos were taken at that time. The photos I have are from earlier.
Right. Mr. Collins, so we can do what here, according to the procedures?
I think that Mr. Legwin can pull a building permit and keep it active through work inspections showing progress. I think we are in the process of demolishing at least one structure out there, and he's asking for some relief on that. I think he said 120 days, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. Is on the demolition aspect of it, is there something remaining to be demolished, or is everything going to be rebuilt?
There's one building that's going to be demolished completely, entirely. The other two are going to, one of them needs to have a roof. I'm having a roofer, as I mentioned in my letter to you, to come before you, that when I asked 7 months ago for a roofer to come and do my building, he looked at it and he said, you know, I really don't have a lot of time to do this. He says, why don't you call me in 6 months and I'll see what I can do. It is a small job to restore the roof to one of the buildings. The other one is probably a little bit more extensive, but now that the building has kind of slacked off, I have a feeling that maybe the builders are going to be more inclined to want to make some money. So I'm asking several of them right now to give me a bid and tell me what it would cost to replace the roof. That's the main thing that I see that is the problem.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
My question is to Public Works. If I'm not mistaken, we did not do this in an aggregate as far as the bids. We did it by address, individual properties, or refresh my memory on whenever we asked for demolition bids.
Usually there's 4 or 5 or 6 in a group that will come forward, and if the board approves the resolution, purchasing will go out for a bid on each of the
individual properties, not an aggregate. Okay.
And they haven't been bid yet.
We
well, it's been on back to us.
Right, but what I was just, this is what I'd like to see do. I'd like to grant the 120-day extension, but at the same time have our, keep it in the bid process. That way, Mr. Legwin, you're going to be held accountable. We're giving you opportunity, working with you every way we can. At the same time, trying to be cognizant of the fact that the neighbors have some concerns of the property that they're living near.
Thank you.
That's my motion.
120 days for demolition. What about the building permit?
That's.
I think you can pull that at any time.
Yeah, I think we ought to make that part of the process.
I'll accept that.
Has to.
I'll accept that.
Apply for a building permit within 30 days. So he repairs the rest of them, demolishes one and repair the rest of them. Okay.
That's my. I'll take that motion.
I'll second that.
Do we have to have a motion for him to do this?
If not, it's fixed to probably be demolished within the 120 days.
Oh, we hadn't even gone out for bid.
No, we're out for bid. We haven't gotten the bids in, and we haven't awarded a contract yet.
I got a question. The time that we're talking about here, does that start when he applies for the building permit or when he gets it?
Today.
Today. And how long is it going to take him to get a building permit?
He's going to need to, on his end, it may take him some time to get the drawings, to get the engineering, to get everything he needs to submit. We can turn it around pretty quickly these days.
Give me a definition of quickly.
We can probably turn it around in a week.
Really?
Turn what around?
Yeah, a building permit.
When he submits, hand it back with a permit.
Okay. May I speak here and just address this issue? I had talked to Bob Keating a long time ago asking him what it would take to get a building permit to put up a greenhouse. And he told me it would be $15 is all it takes to get a building permit to put up a greenhouse. What I am talking about is taking basically a greenhouse and putting it back up again. I mean, it was blown over by the wind. It is only stuck into the ground. It's not in concrete. It's not in. It's just a greenhouse to protect plants that are growing.
But it has to have a safety factor.
It shouldn't be. I mean, he's talking about engineering documents. He's talking about things like this. This is really just a greenhouse. I mean, the difference between a pole barn and a greenhouse is zero. I mean, they're one and the same. You put plastic over a greenhouse, or you put shade cloth over the greenhouse.
Does he need a building permit?
I don't know which structure he's talking about now. If it is an agricultural structure used just for agricultural activities, he does not need a building permit for that.
Okay. And who will determine that?
The building department does.
There you go. Don't even need one.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you.
Okay.
Now, if he doesn't have a building permit, does this put this on hold? What happens, because the permit was a thing that...
May I address that question? I am working as fast as I can to reopen the nursery. I do not want to continue to have this nursery. First off, the value of the property is increased substantially. The value of just having the nursery there is increased substantially. There are houses, there are people there that I know are wanting to come. They want to buy mulch, they want to buy plants, they want to buy things, and they don't necessarily want to drive all the way down to one of the other places when they could get something right there close in the neighborhood. So I see the importance of getting this thing up and running and open to the public, and I'm certainly not going to expose myself to any kind of liability that, because the building doesn't, the structures are not suitable for people to be in.
Okay, you have 120 days for your demolition, and get a building permit on whatever you need one for, okay?
Thank you.
Did we approve that motion?
We didn't vote yet, but...
I don't think we need a motion. He's just going to get to work.
I think we do, because
Yes,
we
we
have
do.
a demolition scheduled on that as soon as we get the bids back in.
Right.
No, we really don't.
I'll make a motion.
I did
Already
make
got a motion.
Maybe we should address it when the bids come back. We'll notify Mr. Legg when he can be here, and we can make a decision at that meeting. Then we're going down both tracks at the same time, and if you feel you've seen the
And we can
progress
see
you
how
need
much
to,
work
we
he's
can,
done.
you can pull that bid.
That's fine, because I never wanted to stop the bid process on the
Withdrawing your motion?
I withdraw it, sure.
We'll withdraw. No motion on the floor. Okay, thanks, Glenn. 9B3, request to speak from Joe Paladin, Growth Awareness Committee, regarding the waiving of form board inspections for Devasta.
Joseph Paladin, Chairman of the Growth Awareness Committee, live at 6450 Tropical Way. Back on May 16th, a presentation came before you by Devasta Corporation to waive form board surveys. They agreed to put up a $100,000 bond. In lieu of that, in case something was wrong, they agreed to tear out the slab, etc. I have several points on that I don't think really was clearly understood when you all voted on that. The question came up twice, once from Mr. Newberger and once from Mr. Wheeler, on whether or not the steel was inspected. Mr. Newberger said certainly the steel is still inspected. Mr. Keating answered that by saying we have a sealed survey from a surveyor to make sure the form boards are right. So the second time it came up, Mr. Wheeler brought it up, and the answer was no. The steel is not inspected. So what I'm saying is this. There's maybe other inspections that are involved that are being waived besides just the form boards. And the reason for this was so that Devasta could go forward and do mass pourings, and they said they had to build a house within 50 days. I personally don't care if they build a house within 50 days. I could care less. I don't think that's pertinent to what we should be doing. Secondly, without the steel being inspected, I think that is a construction problem. Thirdly, I took the month of September, to see what percentage of those surveys or those inspections failed. Based on 252 inspections, 21% of them failed. 19 of them were administratively. 36 of them were due to failures. Now, this is knowing you're going to be inspected. This is guys knowing that our building department is coming out there and inspect it. If you know they're not going to come out there and inspect it, my idea is that maybe you're going to have more that would have failed. Thirdly, and last but not least, we're laying off people. We laid off a few people in the building department. I don't understand why we're laying people off that live here, and we have people that are available to do these inspections. Why would we waive this to make it more convenient for a large developer to build houses in under 50 days? They're building houses at 2 a day. They're selling 2 a week. I don't see the urgency here, people. I just don't see the urgency in this. I don't see it's in our best interest to waive this process just because they're able to put up a $100,000 bond. I just don't see the percentages.
I don't think it was an urgency per se. I think it was a time saving for us and for them, because they wanted to go from one set of footers to the next without having somebody have to run out there each day or each week or each hour.
Actually, let me tell you, I was incorrect back when I said that we weren't inspecting for the steel. We do. We inspect every one of those slabs for steel before they're poured. What happened was DeVosta came in, and as Mr. Paladin said, they move pretty quickly, and they kind of do it in an assembly line fashion. And what they were concerned about is the time it takes for their surveyor to actually go out and shoot the form board locations, put those in a graphic form, put them actually on a plot plan, and then get them to us. Even though it doesn't take too long, they were perceiving that that would slow down their operation. So the only thing that they were trying to avoid was that time delay it takes the surveyor from going out and, as I said, shooting the form boards and then getting us in an actual drawing of
They were still shooting the boards.
Yes, they do.
We were trusting him without looking at his figures. We were trusting him that they were in the right place.
Yes, and then we do review the form board surveys, and it's usually a couple of days later, and if there's any problem, they have to go back and correct them.
Yeah, okay. That's the way I recall it. What's the problem?
Well, I see odd that you recall it that way when that's not the way it went down. You asked the question whether or not steel was being inspected. Bob Keating said no.
And
so
I was
that's
wrong.
not the way I recall it.
Right, I was wrong.
That's my problem. And the second problem is that I just don't see the urgency or the reasoning to waive anything for a developer because he wants to go faster when his answer is he has to build a house in under 50 days. I just don't care. I don't think anybody else should care. I think that we ought to just let them follow the procedures we have. That's the rules and regulations we have. And if they don't like it, they can build someplace else. It's just that simple. That's my problem.
Thanks for your comments.
Bob, is there any reason for us to readdress that policy in light of what we're seeing right now?
I think in this case, we entered into an agreement with DeVosta. I'm not sure at this time if you could go back and do it, but I think in subsequent occasions, if a builder asks for that to be done, it's at your discretion whether or not you want to do it.
Why was it recommended to us?
I think because in this case, we didn't see that it would be a problem. We thought that if it would benefit a builder and it isn't a problem to the county, doesn't go against any of our ordinances, wouldn't deviate from any of our rules, that it would be something that would do.
My mindset on that was one other wrinkle, and that was try to alleviate some of the burden, the overburden that was put on our building inspectors at the time. We were covered up. And I'm not so sure that right now it's not. We may have an opportunity to pull that back into the fold of the process that everybody else would have to follow.
Well, there's also the concept that time is money, and if you can get something done quicker, you can get it done cheaper. And if we're talking about attainable housing costs, I don't see a downside to being able to get a house to market quicker.
Yeah. I think that we're not looking at affordable housing. Spencer Simmons Construction. DeVos is not building affordable housing. Form boards have two other things. One is elevation, and when everything's flooding out there, and because their elevations ain't proper, and today it's form boards, tomorrow it's going to be walls, all because they need to go faster. And like you say, well, time is money. Well, time is money for me. We're going to waive that for myself. You know, I like to build a house faster and waive some inspections so I can get it out there on the market a little quicker. I think that, you know, Joe and myself and a few of the small builders continually see that, you know, everybody wants to bend over backwards for the large builders at the expense of everybody else in this county. And you're right, they do an assembly line out there. And luckily they have a big dirt wall around it, but that development looks no different than KB Homes. And it's all about let's build them fast and let's push them down everybody's throat here. And now we're just going to go ahead and start waiving inspections to help them push a house out there faster.
We're
And I
not
just
waiving them per se. They're still getting done. It's just we're reading the plan a day later.
That's correct. It's just a timing issue. We look at the form board usually a couple of days later, and if there's any problem, they go out and correct it, and if they don't correct it, we would take down part of that $100,000 bond.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman. What I'm hearing here is we're treating the builders inconsistently, and what's the criteria we use to justify that?
In this case, a builder came with a request and you approved it. The builder indicated that he was willing to put up surety, and he proposed an alternative way to do something, and the agreement came to you and you approved it. Conceivably, we would do it with other builders. If other builders wanted to enter into an agreement, if other builders wanted to put up surety, and if other builders wanted to comply with the process that was set out here. Again, we were looking at the number of homes that they were doing. It was a critical mass. We were looking at the procedure they've used in other jurisdictions, and they've done this in other places. And we looked at whether or not this would just circumvent any rules or just be a different procedure that wouldn't circumvent any county rules.
Accomplishes the same thing.
Let me ask you, could we at another meeting bring this back and revisit it and look at whether we have an agreement or not and what the agreement says and take another look at it, make sure we did the right thing or change it if we didn't do the right thing? So we could set this up for another agenda?
The next one.
14th, 21st, or sometime, however long you think you can bring it back to us, Bob?
21st. I don't see it as a big problem, guys.
Well, you start with the slab, and okay, they say we'll take that surety bond and we'll use that. But once the slab is off, everything else is going to be off. And they're saying, hey, we'll count the beams. We tear up the slab, we give them a couple thousand out of our surety bond. Next thing you know, the whole house, starting from the slab, is off.
It'll be built upside down eventually.
Well, you know what? When the elevation is too low and you've got flooding over there, and then all of a sudden you've got somebody standing here saying, "Hey, you know what? Our neighborhood's flooding."
We have a surveyor that's going to do all that.
But if the slab is already poured, because they poured it today and they've looked at the survey 2 days from now.
So then the slab goes.
And if they don't do the slab, they pay the surety bond and they continue building. And that's what they said.
The sky is not falling.
Well,
they did build one up there.
Hopefully we don't have too many more of these big developments.
Moving right along.
Mr. Chairman, my biggest argument was that I thought there were inspections according to the information we had at the last meeting, which was stated that way. I don't think I misunderstood it. But now I'm understanding that, Bob, there's no inspections, that we overlook it all? Nothing's overlooked at all?
We do all the inspections. We do the steel inspection. I misspoke last time. And we do the form board inspection. We do look at the form board survey. We just look at it after they've poured the slab. We look at it usually 2 or 3 days later.
And the second problem I had was the fact that we are slow now at the building department, and we did lay off people. And I would rather try and accommodate my people who live here and work here than accommodate a builder that wants to build houses in less than 50 days.
Well, maybe he'll have inspectors going out there to check it personally anyway, now that he has time.
Okay, if that's good enough for you, I guess it's up to the rest of the commission.
Well, we have a professional surveyor stating his opinion that this is built and the elevation is the right place. The DOT does that all the time. We rely on professionals who have given us some information, and we accept it.
And I don't see the harm in doing it like everybody else does it. Yeah. I don't see how the county benefits from us deviating from our rules and regulations.
We're going to bring it back.
It's a modification, not a deviation.
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
Do we have any records of, particularly the large builders, of how many times or percentage-wise they do things wrong? I would like to know that information periodically.
That's what we gave Mr. Paladin. He had a public information request of how many people had, we can get that out of our database, had failed the inspection. And I do want to apologize. He wouldn't have gone on the agenda. We just gave him misinformation. And it's kind of a landmark day. It's the first time Bob's ever admitted to being wrong. So we're like,
You're overdue, Joe.
And how many times were form boards put in the wrong place? I think that would be really rare.
We occasionally see it. Actually, it's one of the best things that the county ever did was when the county went to form board surveys. That's one of the reasons we don't have to deal with variances for houses being built in the wrong place. But just one more follow-up to how many inspections are failed. A lot of the bigger builders in the last few years have gone to using private providers. And that was a state law a few years ago that builders have a right to use private providers, and most of the big builders have been using private providers the last few years because they can get things done expeditiously, and we go and we audit a certain percent of private provider inspections, but we don't look at 100% of those.
Okay, are we through with this item? Oh. Okay, item number 9B4, request to speak from Brian Heddy regarding saving tax dollars. That's a good subject. Hello, Brian. We haven't seen you for a while.
How you doing, Mr. Newberger? Glad to hear you missed me.
I did.
I didn't hear him say that. I just hadn't seen you for
Come on back.
Yeah, really? I threw something in there that wasn't necessarily there, huh?
I miss you, Brian, like a toothache.
There you go.
Come on back in a couple of weeks, Brian. Start it weekly again.
Well, I want to make sure that I come back one last time. I didn't want to let Mr. Newberger leave without one last appearance.
This is a goodbye 3-minute speech?
I say, I'm pretty good at 3 minutes, Does that count the time? No.
No, of course not.
Anyway, how you doing? I threw some information up and some backup material on on the topic today, and as you can see from the backup material, on 3/21 there was a letter drafted by staff which alleged some code violations occurred on March 19th, and further stated that a citation had been issued as a result of the violations. And you have that on Exhibit A. The letter stated that in accordance with the provisions of this citation, and a civil penalty must be received within 10 days, and the violation was unauthorized salvaging. And the violator was given 10 days to pay. I might point out that at this time, at the date of the letter, 3/21, there was no citation. No notice of a violation had been given to the respondent, and in fact, the citation had not been issued. 7 days after this letter went out, he was given 10 days to pay. 7 days after the letter went out, the citation was in fact issued, and that you can see on Exhibit B. And on that same date, March 28th, a certified mailing was made to the respondent. It was not delivered, however, and it was returned to the code enforcement at the county administration building, and the notation on that envelope, that's Exhibit C, identifies the return date as 4/15, was unable to forward. 9 days after that, on April 24th, a date identified in the 3/21 letter, an administrative hearing was held, and it was noted by staff that the respondent was not in attendance. However, the Code Enforcement Board did not advise, and they were not advised, that he had not received the notification. Staff clearly knew that as it was returned to them. On that 24th, as you can see in Exhibit D, they did hold the hearing, and it was found an order finding violation, upholding the citation was issued. The finding of facts and conclusions of law found that the respondent was notified when the facts clearly demonstrate he was not properly served. There was no constructive notice of the hearing. The findings of fact also conclude that the respondent had committed the salvaging violations on dates that were inconsistent with the dates in the citation. So they found him guilty of doing something that he wasn't ever charged with. And anyway, that's Exhibit E1 and 2. He was given 30 days to pay, but it wasn't until 4 weeks later on 5/23 that he was actually notified by mail of the hearings, the violations, the citation, the resulting findings of fact, and the imposed fine. 2 weeks after that, after some conversations with me, I advised him that he needed to go down and pay the fine, that we can argue the relative guilt or the merits of the case afterwards, but first let's get the fine taken care of, let's get that paid so that he doesn't have an outstanding fine on his property, any liens on his property. He did go down and pay that, and that's exhibit F. He paid the $200 fine. Now, as part of my research, I looked through documents, and I have a couple hundred of them, and I won't bore you with all of that because Mr. Newberger has limited me to my 3 minutes. But anyway, I think that it's fairly clear that from the documents that I have presented to you that we can save some tax dollars by putting an end to this miscarriage of justice by a resolution of the county commission vacating the judgment and returning the wrongfully imposed fine, and that's what I would ask from you today.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if I could, Will, what kind of recourse, and I guess I'm reading the item G coming from Reverend Doug Voigt, and I don't know if this is a situation where this gentleman pulled up, knew Doug, and he had some apparent items that he wouldn't mind taking, and Doug gave them to him. But what kind of action can we take on this issue, if any?
Well, it's a code enforcement violation. There's a fine for it. The fine's been issued and paid. If someone contests code enforcement, they can, 1, show up and state their case, 2, appeal it if they think the decision was wrong. But just flipping through this, and I didn't see it until a few seconds ago, service was made. It was refused. A lot of people won't accept mail, but that's still good service if you get certified mail and it's refused.
I thought there was something there that said it was returned. Returned to sender.
It does, but it says it was refused.
Refused. I didn't see that. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Bill DeBrawl on behalf of the County Attorney's Office. If this is the instance that I'm thinking it was, Mr. Luongo was the respondent, is that correct?
That's correct.
If Mr. Luongo was served by the sheriff issuing the citation and handing it to him personally, I believe code enforcement then followed up with the certified mail, and the certified mail was not picked up. But the actual constructive notice was handed to Mr. Luongo as to the citation and the procedures that he must take in order to either dispute the violation or pay the assessed fine. Thank you.
Sounds like you should have showed up for the hearing then, Brian.
Well, there's nothing in the record anywhere that I've seen where there was any service. If you look at the exhibit, which is the citation, you see that the citation was in fact issued 7 days after the letter. The citation is not signed. There is no notice. There is nothing from any sheriff's officer saying that he delivered it. In fact, the letter indicates that it was part of the mailing that went out on the 21st. And I hear what the gentleman has said, but I have no evidence that any sheriff ever served this notice.
Well, Mr. Luongo probably didn't tell you.
Well, that may be, but I think that if you look at the evidence, if you look at from the county record, if you look at the code enforcement citation, there are places for the signature and for some choices. You see that there is no signature, and if a police officer had actually delivered this citation, there'd be some signatures on it. If a police officer had delivered it and there was a refusal to sign it, then I believe that's a misdemeanor, and there would have been some criminal charges filed. That didn't happen.
I guess my question, Will, under the citation, Exhibit B, down under right to a hearing, it does have, if you wish to seek a hearing and review of the charge, check 1, and 1 is underlined. But there's no box marked or signature signed. And we all know if you get a speeding ticket, You've got to do that. Why would, if an officer has sent this, why wouldn't this ticket be signed by the person receiving it?
Yeah, let me just say.
I have a question.
Let me just first say, I wasn't aware that Mr. Hetty, I'm not sure if he gets a complete file or not. But when we issue out a citation, we make a copy of it, we put it in the file before it's sent out, before it's signed by the respondent. And then subsequently, we get a copy of it signed. If they don't sign it, it's a misdemeanor, and we can pursue that. So we've had testimony through our attorney's office, there was sheriff's delivery. So that copy he has on its face is not the final product, so I wouldn't rely on that in particular. But I'm saying that he was notified of the hearing. He paid the fine. He had that opportunity. It was written right on the citation. So if we want to further explore the file.
The role of what you're saying is every single citation that's issued is signed.
When we serve it, we say, we even highlight it and say, look, you need to sign this to accept it, because if you don't, it's a misdemeanor. You also have an opportunity to sign it if you want to appeal this either to the code board or directly to county court. And that's how it works. If I recall, I think this was even on the agenda for the April code board meeting. Mr. Luongo didn't show up. When a respondent doesn't appeal, it by default is upheld. He subsequently came in and paid the fine. I'm not sure why this is an issue.
And I guess my question too, Brian, is down at the bottom, it does state, the hearing date, it does state April 24th, 2006. So he would have known at some point in time that there was going to be a hearing on the 24th.
How would he have known if he wasn't given the citation?
Well, I think Roland's just telling me that he's got I guess every person receives one.
Okay. I asked for the public record, paid for the public record, the complete file, and I can tell you that if there is any receipt of this citation, it was not contained in the public record. I asked for the complete file on this entire matter.
From what office? I mean, there's multiple files in different offices. The attorney's office has a file. Code enforcement has a file. I wasn't aware of your request, and like I said, if you want a supplemental information, we can look further into it.
I'd like to know, Brian, what is your standing in this matter?
Where's Mr. Luongo?
Are you representing Mr. Luongo?
I am.
Does he know that?
Yes, he does.
I also want to point out that Mr. Luongo has had multiple meetings with county administration staff, with SWID staff, with my office, all along the way. So there's no surprises here.
Well, he was accused by the people at the recycling centers of coming in there and taking things away, which is not bad except it's against the law. And he was stealing, as it were, aluminum and metals and things like that, which we would normally recycle and make money on. So, and he got warned many times before this happened. So, and besides what Brian's interested in this, I'm not sure. But apparently he hasn't got the full record. So why don't you two get together and see if you can make him happy? What is this?
I'm just wondering how any of this is saving tax money.
Well, it's going to save some tax dollars because you don't have to continue through with the hearings like this. It's going to save you tax dollars because Mr. Luongo is not going to go any further with this, which is what his thoughts are now. And I thought that we could save some tax dollars by putting an end to it. If there is a record of him receiving any notification of the hearing, then I can tell you categorically, without question, that it was not in the public record request, the Chapter 119 request that he made for the complete record. I advised him to do that, and I was here and picked it up with him, and I have it here with me, and there was no such notification. He has advised me that he wasn't notified of this prior to the hearing, that he didn't know about it, and that's why he wasn't there. And you're hearing now that there was notification, and I would ask for the production of those documents.
You shall have it.
Brian, he was well aware. He went with Mike Zito, my assistant. He met with my secretary. He met with Eric Olson.
Prior to the hearing?
Yes.
Okay. Then I would ask for production of the documents to demonstrate that.
He walked in, and then when we do take walk-ins, and he was well aware of it. And, you know, it's unfortunate that he didn't, you know, he couldn't see where he was doing wrong, but he was. And, you know, but he was well aware of it.
Okay, well, you're saying he walked in, and I think that the citation is clear, and these documents are clear that they require signatures.
Yeah, let me just say this. What you have might be evidence that he didn't sign it, and that's a misdemeanor. But he paid the fine, so we didn't pursue that.
Well, he paid the fine. If you look at the check, you see that he paid it under protest.
Can we cease the argument and the discussion? We need to wrap this thing up. Gary, you have something?
First, I'm concerned that Mr. Longo isn't here to answer some of the questions that were brought up over and above what conversation you had with him, Brian.
All hearsay here today.
And secondly, I think the real question here is, and what I got from you this morning has some confusion in the dates and things that you brought out, and I think they're legitimate. The bottom line is did he do it? And if he didn't, the dates and stuff can be corrected and the charges can still stand. Because if he did do it, in fact, and there was a violation, that doesn't go away because the dates were messed up. You just go back and refile. So, and I wish he was here so he could answer some of the questions, because we're caught in the middle here between what you're saying, which is what Mr. Longo told you, and what our staff is saying. And he's not here to...
Well, actually, it's not from what he told me. When he initially told me this, I told him that he should go down and pay the fine, mark the check under protest, and then we need to request the public documents. And that's exactly what I did. I requested the file, the complete file. In fact, there were 2 letters that went out because the file seemed to be incomplete. There were 2 Chapter 119 requests for the complete file, and I can tell you that within that record, there certainly is nothing that indicates... Go ahead.
Well, no, these papers that you show us...
Yes, sir.
Indicate, and I see where you're coming from, but if he wasn't forthright with you, saying he didn't know, and he's showing you documents that he didn't sign because he didn't...
No, he didn't show me those documents, Mr. Wheeler. Those documents came from a Chapter 119 request for the public record on this case.
Okay, regardless of that, though, but I can see where the paperwork would lead you to where you're at, but if Mr. Longo did know about it and was avoiding it, it's a whole different picture than what these documents...
Well, that's why I've asked for a production of the documents that would demonstrate that he was properly served.
We'll try and get those, Brian. Let me try and get, if there is, we'll get it to you. I apologize. I don't know who you asked for the documents.
Okay.
Okay.
So you'll get me the documents, what, 2-3 days?
We'll try and get them today if we can.
Okay.
Okay?
All right, give me a call when they're ready, and I'll come pick them up.
All right. I'm sorry about that.
Thank you.
So nice seeing you again.
It is. Come back.
Yeah, after the 21st.
More often after the 21st.
You're always welcome.
And it was in 2 minutes and 59 seconds.
9B5.
I got another second?
Continue.
Have a great retirement.
Request to speak from Susan Thomason, Vice President, Bureau of Lake Estates Property Owners, regarding spraying vegetation in swales. You've been very patient.
Good morning. Thank you for your time. It's been interesting. Susan Thomason, 8275 105th Avenue, Vero Beach. I'm also Vice President of the Vero Lake Estate Property Owners, and I want to clarify that I'm here representing myself and simply a handful of the residents that I've had the opportunity to speak with. I'd like to address a new practice in our community, and that is the spraying of vegetation by toxic chemical behind the swells, behind our homes and the swales, which are in close proximity to our wells and water supply. The 3 products that, according to the county, they're being used is Reward by Syngenta, Riverdale by New Farm, which is basically a generic version of Roundup, and Hardball by Helena Chemical Corporation. I provided you with the MSDS for each one of these products. I personally spoke with 2 of the 3 companies. These are all poisons, and not one of them could guarantee that these toxic chemicals could not in some way end up in our water supply. And the first spraying was carried out with any warning to residents. So I had to wonder how many children and pets and possibly endangered species were exposed to the fumes or walked through these chemicals unknowingly. And I want to say that I'm not here as a fanatic, but personally I've been through many, many years of diagnostic tests, very expensive diagnostic tests to determine that I'm chemically sensitive or hypersensitive to chemicals. And I have to determine by trial and error what to stay away from. And I can tell you when I just simply held the label that had been attached to one of the containers, I experienced a reaction. So they are very toxic. And I know that you have many, many approvals that would allow you to continue with this practice. There are approvals for trans fatty acids in our food supply that cause over 200,000 heart attacks annually. There are approvals for X-rays, which is now listed according to the U.S. government as a known carcinogen and is cumulative over a lifetime. And there are approvals for medications that have caused fatalities. So just because you have approvals doesn't mean that a substance is harmless. So I wanted to ask the county why you would want to take such a risk with the residents, the people in the community, the animals, the pets, the children, when you already had a non-toxic method in place. And I had to speak out today because I'm a firm believer that ultimately we're all held accountable for our for our actions or lack thereof. And so I respectfully request that the county discontinue this practice in my neighborhood.
Thank you. Any comment from staff or?
What we had in place before was that just mechanical?
Yes, that's correct. It was mowing and weed eating.
Okay. Jim?
We could maybe not do her block. We would hate, it's very labor intensive. We would, we use chemicals all over the county. We could simply not do her block, and we think that might be the solution.
Yeah. Is this a total defoliant, this stuff?
Systemic.
Yeah, it's a surfactant. It's just a Roundup type herbicide that the county's used over the years for weed control and backlot ditch maintenance. There's over 70 miles of backlot ditches in Vero Lake Estates, and we have found, as well as the water control districts have found, that it's much more productive and quicker to use a gentle herbicide.
But what about how it affects a person's health or the water supply, as you mentioned?
Well, we've asked Glenn Schuessler with the Health Department to comment on that, and he did send an email on October the 18th, and Glenn's here, basically stating that this does not create a public health or environmental hazard. It's applied in the flow line of the backlot ditches. We confine it to the backlot ditches themselves. I think one of the concerns is, well, perhaps the chemical can get into the well screen. The well screens are usually 80 to 90 feet deep, and once you filter that through 80 or 90 feet of sand, if you have no impermeable layers there, it would take many, many years to get to the well screen and would be so diluted to the point where we don't feel that potable wells in the area would be polluted. You do have septic tanks in the area that probably effluent from a septic tank would get into the well screen prior to an herbicide that's applied at such a small localized area.
Actually, one of the products that were used when I spoke to the manufacturer, he stated that that product, which is hardball, should not even be used in that manner, but simply to prepare a bed to go later and put rocks or plastic so it will not encourage any future growth. But it's not meant for continual spraying. And I have a report from the U.S. Department of Agriculture I can provide to each of you.
Is hardball a residual herbicide then? Is that?
There is a cumulative effect, and if you go back before, these things take a long time to decompose, and if you go back with a second product in the same area, it can have a synergistic effect, which is even more toxic.
How often are we doing this how often? What's your rotation period?
Probably once or twice a year. I don't know how long you've lived there. How many times have you seen it applied?
This is the first time.
The first time.
Yes,
How many times how long have you lived there?
3.5 years.
So one time in 3.5 years.
But you indicated to me it would be a future practice.
As needed, usually yearly or perhaps twice a year, which is a very infrequent use. People use Roundup in their own yards,
I don't.
No, Roundup isn't not really.
I have lots of information. You can stop me at one ream or two that I can give you as to how toxic. This is meant for agricultural and commercial areas, not residential.
Well, actually, we sent our people to school, and we've looked at the products, because we are very sensitive to this, and these are products that can be used.
The least toxic.
Yeah, the list that can be used.
Toxic is toxic, and it's cumulative. Please look at this. I'm not asking you to make a decision today. I'll give you more information, and then you can render your decision.
I think one thing that we can do today is, I mean, I think it'd be very appropriate what you suggested. If there's some objections to some of the neighbors, directly give them the opportunity to opt out of that if we could, with some kind of. I mean, peanuts don't bother me, but it's lethal to some people.
Yes, that's correct.
So, I have been all around Roundup, and it doesn't hurt me, but that doesn't mean it doesn't somebody else. So
It's real susceptible.
it's a powerful herbicide.
It's a pretty nasty chemical.
I'm not a plant.
They're endocrine disruptors.
Right. Yeah, and so I think if we could, oblige her in that and move forward with it. And also what she said about just if we could, I'd like to know about the hardball that you mentioned as far as that date came.
We'll send a little information thing to the commission so they know what we're doing.
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Okay, public notice items. Notice of scheduled public hearing November 14th. Amendment to Section 201.09D of the Indian River County Code. Item 10, County Administrator's Matters, 2007 Fellsmere Frog Leg Festival. Joe?
Yes, the Frog Leg Festival has requested that we do a few things that we've done in the past and have the bleacher tents and things like that. And I don't really have the authority without board approval. It's that simple. We don't have a problem. I will tell you this, that they cooperated with us, and that's why we're doing this. I had a few years ago made an agreement with them. They cooperated with us when we were out at Mesa Park, and so I promise we'd do
I'll
this.
move approval if you want an extended time, so you don't have to do this every year. I'd even put more time on it, whatever you feel good with, Joe.
Are you moving staff recommendation?
And the only reason we're not recommending the sign, we will put the sign up if we can, but we've got a lot of roads under construction. We may need them for that purpose.
Yeah, and that certainly, health, safety, and welfare has to come above festivals. But, yeah, I mean, basically, I just move to approve the request and accommodate them as best we can with
Second.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Requests to speak forum. Joe?
Yes, we had discussion about the request to speak form, and it looks like I went a little further. I said, and I have a little note on the form that is, I took notes during the meeting, and a commissioner mentioned that you wouldn't vote on any matters, and in our ordinance, Will has pointed out that it says you can vote on them. So I just wanted to bring it in front of you so you see the form one more time, and we can delete that line if you so wish. But it is contrary. We don't encourage the commission to vote on public items as a staff because you're only getting one side. You usually don't have full documentation, but it is in the ordinance that you can, and I probably shouldn't have put that on the form.
I think the forum's working great. We had 5 people use it. It's the first day it's out.
Yeah, but the line item about the commission does not vote.
That's the whole crux of this, because I would have thought by hearing someone at the podium talk until staff came and didn't know this was on and told us there's a further story and investigation of this. We need to have the whole
You
facts.
could maybe change your ordinance and say.
We certainly could and should.
Well, I don't see anything wrong with it. If something comes up, we certainly can make a motion to maybe answer the problem or direct it to staff or direct
That's
more.
not what we've been doing.
Or direct more
We can do that without a
discussion on it or any number of things that are not out of the, but I'm not going to be here after the 21st, so you all make a decision.
I don't want us to have a forum that would stop us from taking action on behalf of a citizen. Sometimes it's a no-brainer. And
let's don't now, Mr. Commissioner Davis, let's don't put it that way, because that's not the intent of what we're trying to do here. We certainly work for this well-being of the community and citizens, but unless we know the complete story and have time to think about it and look into it, then we're not making wise decisions. And that's all I'm asking for, is information and a time factor that we can, and staff have input, that we can make wise decisions.
Well, they're generally just a very innocent little request, and I think you don't need weeks to make a decision. You just listen to what people
Well,
have
they
to
weren't
say.
innocent little requests today, and we had staff say that there's more to each story.
There is. That's why we referred it back to staff.
And didn't vote, though.
We didn't
But
vote.
you made a motion each time, and would have.
Well, I was ready to get it over with.
And we
Take care of
Well,
business.
went through it. Bob, you have some comment on this?
Bob Johnson, Carlwyn subdivision. I don't have any objection to the form. I just hope that it's email friendly, so we can send you an email on a request instead of.
It's on the website.
Okay.
You can email it to us. You can phone us, and we will fill out the form. We're trying to be totally flexible with this.
Okay. Thank you.
I just want to add that the form is very friendly. It's a Word document. It was emailed to me. However, they should create some blanks in there where you can actually fill in. I had to back up the lines and type in my own material. So if they create the sections where you can put in the information, it'd be great.
We can do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
More information we get, the better it is.
Yeah. I'll vote on that.
Okay.
I would,
You're not allowed to.
I would, I agree with the intent where Sandra's coming from, but I also don't want to tie our hands when something minimal comes in front of us, that it's a matter of action. I would hope that the board would have enough concerns about that if it is something, just as we did today, where we need more
Give
information, that then we give direction to bring it back at another meeting and we can
Right.
consider it. And I'd rather leave it in the hands of 3 votes of the board than just to make it mandatory that we can't vote on something and tie our hands where there may be something we want to vote on, and we got to inconvenience somebody for another week or 2 or 3 because of that.
Well, those type of incidents, I wouldn't think we'd even need a vote on if it's so immaterial and minor. We just give direction, but.
Yeah, but I agree with what you're saying, Sandra, but I just,
And I understand, and I'll go along with that. It's just the previous practice of this commission has not been great in that manner. And we've made mistakes.
We have.
But we've learned.
We have.
I hope.
Yeah. Gonna make more.
No, we're not. That's why we
Well,
learn.
done kicking around this very important matter.
Can we vote on it?
Yeah, can we vote on doing it?
Do you need a vote on this, Joe? Do you need a?
I'm going to take the statement off. That's that easy. It'll be off.
Okay. I don't mind voting on it if you need.
By whose direction are you doing that?
I'll make a motion that we take the statement off.
I'll second the motion that we take the statement off.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Wasn't very controversial after all.
Sounds like the last
I'm
couple of
losing
years.
track. Departmental matters, all the way down to utility services. Item 11J, South County Reverse Osmosis Water Treatment Plant. Board of County Commissioner authorization request to issue an emergency purchase order to Carlson Moore Construction for a permeate pipe replacement.
Staff recommendation.
Somebody stand up and tell me what a permeate pipe is.
It's a pipe that's permanent.
Yeah.
Pipe that's permeate, right?
Yes.
Not permanent, permeate.
Permeate, as in leaks.
For the record, Eric Olson, Director of Utilities. The permeate pipe is the last, after it goes to the reverse osmosis process, it's the last piece of pipe that goes out to the residential area. It's a specialized stainless steel material, though. It's extremely specialized.
What does permeate mean?
After it comes through the reverse osmosis process, it's the permeate. It's just a word that describes the material that comes out of the reverse osmosis process. There's 2 components that come out. One is a brine component, one is a permeate, which is the clean water component.
What is permeated through the membrane.
Right. That's a good description.
Yeah.
Okay.
The ones with
good.
sunshine law, you could have explained that to him earlier.
Well,
It's a derivative of permeable.
That's probably it.
Okay. Number 2, stay there. Alternative water supply joint workshop with Indian River County and St. John's Water Management District.
You want to vote on that last
You
one?
want to vote on the first one?
I'm sorry. Did I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Do I have a motion? All in favor, say aye.
Motion already. Motion was already out there.
Well, he's a
Opposed,
pretty.
like sign, motion carries. Now, item number J2, alternative water supply joint workshop with Indian River County and St. John's. Is that your item?
Again, Eric Olson, Director of Utilities. This will be the first of what will be 3 public workshops, basically spread over a period of time from December 6th, which is the first meeting. It'll have members of St. John's Water Management District. It'll also have public from a number of committees that we've been talking to with respect to what would be future water supply alternatives for the county. I think one of the issues that we've talked about over the last 6 or 8 months as we move through the process of expanding our North RO plant and putting in new wells is trying to look 25, 30, 40, 50 years down the road. What is the best future water supply? And I think what you're going to hear on December 6th from the St. John's Water Management District, that Florida is in a transitional process. It is important to look at a number of things. We had an item not too long ago regarding the acreage out west with St. John's. That's part of the process that'll be in the decision-making for future water supplies. Who owns that water? That's a good question, and you'll hear discussions on that on December 6th. So this is an important first step in determining what will be our source supply for the next 50 years. And it's kind of one of those things that you take this first step, it's a public process, and it'll be followed by one probably in February where we begin to get some of the information together, and then ultimately we'll have a final public process in the latter part of the spring where we bring the information together for a recommendation to the Commission.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, yes.
Eric, I applaud your efforts in that. It's been an ongoing issue through the Ag Advisory Committee, the Soil and Water Conservation District. I would also like to add another topic, if we could, for one of these meetings, and it's just before my second vote for the comp plan amendment with the St. John's. I would like to see both sides of the equation, if you will, for the comp plan changes. That is to change the 3,000 acres back to A2 and the A2 out in Fellsmere back to, even if it is going to be conservation. I don't know that yet. I'd like to also know what the intent is with that 100-acre island out there. And if some of this is confidential, I may have to know that information before I take my second vote.
And if it is sold to an agency, government agency, don't they have to disclose all of that before?
I doubt it's sold, but I imagine...
Well, some of it is going to be sold.
It's going to be, but I don't know if I'll have that prior to me making my decision, and that's why I want to know as much as I can. I have some concerns.
We did meet with them in Palatka last week, basically just talk about the workshop, developing the process, kind of getting who's going to be there and that sort of thing. I took the liberty at that time, I did mention to them that this issue is coming back, so they need to be thinking about these questions, and we'll be talking to them again on the 16th, just simply in preparation. So I suspect they'll be in a position to be able to answer whatever questions you need, and maybe not in the form of this workshop, but they should be knowledgeable at that point.
I'll go to Palatka if I have to. I just want to...
We forewarned them last week, and again on the 16th, we'll be talking to them up in Palm Bay on that, so they will be fully aware of it.
Okay.
Eric, I have another question before you leave. The deep wells we're getting ready to dig.
Right.
I heard it first at the Water and Soil meeting, and then again later on that why don't we use surface water? There's something wrong with using surface water that regenerates constantly?
Well, nothing wrong with using surface water. In fact, that's obviously going to be one of the discussion items on the December 6th. But on the short term, for us to make an evaluation to change to surface type of a permitting process, and frankly the process of water production, that's something that it takes years. I mean, you basically, it's not like going out, there's a huge lake next door and you suddenly decide, okay, I'm going to stick a pipe in it. St. John's will tell you that it has problems in itself. I mean, to give you an example, one of the things that was discussed related to the 6,000 acres that would be tied into the existing 4, you know, during drought conditions, you're subject to federal regulations associated with everything from, apple snails to snail kites to whatever federal endangered species. So there's an awful lot of information that comes into the process. Is it a potential source? Absolutely, no doubt about it. And you're going to hear that on the December 6th meeting. They're going to talk about the pluses and the minuses, permitting issues that will be associated with this, recognizing that this meeting on the 6th is not intended to come to a conclusion. Rather, it's intended to listen to ideas, to bring together what might be 4 or 5 different conceptual things to kind of focus on, and then bring that into some sort of a conclusion by spring.
Okay.
So.
It is a possibility.
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely.
Any other questions of Eric while he's there?
No, sir.
Okay.
You need a motion on that, or just a?
Well, I think it was just a report, wasn't it? You want to make a motion?
I mean, I don't know.
A motion
We're
to set
approving
up
the date, aren't we?
Yeah, approving the date for the
Approving the
meeting.
date?
Move approval.
Okay, I have a motion. Is there a second? I'll second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Let's see, we're about due for our 90-minute break. Let's take 5. We have quite a few things
We're
to
going to
go
take a
here.
90-minute break?
A 90-minute break.
See you after lunch.
90-minute break is going to be 5 minutes. A break that we take every 90 minutes. You got it, guys?
I know what you meant, Commissioner. Yes, I did.
Your Indian River County Commission meeting is in a brief recess. Please stay tuned. The meeting will reconvene in just a moment. Your Indian River County Commission meeting is in a brief recess. Please stay tuned. The meeting will reconvene in just a moment. Your Indian River County Commission meeting is in a brief recess. Please stay tuned. The meeting will reconvene in just a moment. Your Indian River County Commission meeting is in a brief recess. Please stay tuned. The meeting will reconvene in just a moment. Your Indian River County Commission meeting is in a brief recess. Please stay tuned. The meeting will reconvene in just a moment.
Back to order. We're at item 12, County Attorney's Matters, a property exchange with Windsor Properties, Golden Sands Park.
Good morning, Commissioners. Bill DeBrawl on behalf of the County Attorney's Office.
We have a motion and a second for staff recommendation. Any discussion? Assume you're ready to vote?
The only thing that I would like to caution the Commission on at this point, the agreement that was provided to you in your backup has changed slightly in paragraph 3B.
Uh-oh.
To the better, though.
Well, I mean, it makes sense, I guess. The changes, the changes that were made, no, not with the buffer requirements or anything like that. The changes that were made as far as environmental site assessment has to be done. Each owner of each individual parcel of property must do their own environmental site assessment. If there is something, if there are toxic chemicals found on the site, each party must do a cleanup up to $50,000. If the price exceeds $50,000, that party can withdraw from the agreement. But if the party that is to receive the parcel of property says, wait, I will pay the excess of the $50,000 cleanup, that brings everybody back into the mix and the agreement goes forward.
Everybody being...
Anticipate any of that?
No, we don't anticipate any of these. I want to make sure that you understand.
It's in a dumping ground.
Bill, for the public's information, why don't you go through this presentation a little bit so they understand what we're talking about here?
Very good. This is the third time that the Golden Sands project has been before you, and this hopefully is the final rendition that you'll be seeing. The original agreement called for Windsor to swap a 9-acre parcel of property with the county to make Windsor's property contiguous, and in exchange, the county would receive a new Golden Sands Park reconstructed, as well as an unrestricted cash donation that this board previously has earmarked for recreational purposes, parks and recreational purposes in the county.
An amount of?
$1 million, and that amount has already been deposited in escrow.
And
Yes,
for clarification on that, I did read in the paper where we all agreed that goes back into recreation. We didn't agree to that, did
Well,
we?
the state required it. When Commissioner Lowther and I went up to the state, they required a few things. They required that the $1 million be used for parks and recreation as part of the agreement.
The state required that. We didn't do that.
Yes, and so now it's part of the agreement if we're going to do the swap. The other thing I think is very important, in the swap, there's a down zoning from about 22 units an acre to 6 as part of it. And that's another great thing for the community. We're getting a new park, so it's all a win-win situation for everybody.
Yes. The original terms of the agreement are that the Windsor property will go ahead and we have to do a comp plan amendment, a small-scale comp plan amendment, to change the future land use from Con 1 to L1, low density. It will also have to be rezoned to an RS3. On top of that, Windsor will go ahead and additionally deed restrict the property that they receive as a result of this exchange so that it conforms with the rest of the Windsor development. There will also be specifics put in as far as turtle protection, turtle lighting, best management practices when they come to develop the property. So those are the obligations that Windsor has. The county's obligations are mostly the governmental things, that we have to go ahead and file the future land use amendments to the comprehensive plan and do the rezoning. Windsor has volunteered to do all of the surveys that were necessary. The reason that it has come back before this board is because of the small parcel of property here that I've highlighted. Whoops, that's off of there that I've highlighted there. That's the Spallone parcel. Back after Golden Sands Park was up and running, the county purchased an additional 1.4 acres and added it to the north end of Golden Sands Park. We turned around and deeded this back to the state in exchange for a 50-50 cost share reimbursement. So that's why we have to bring this back before you now, because there's a third party that's been added, and that would be the state of Florida. And when Mr. Baird and Mr. Lowther and Mr. Davis, did you go as well to Tallahassee? The two of you went. You appeared before the committee of the Board of Trustees, and they favorably recommended the exchange with the areas added in green. The basic exchange is still the same, but now that 1.4 acres on the north end of Golden Sands Park is going to be transferred to the south end of Golden Sands Park. It's going to consist of a 100-foot buffer that's going to be dedicated by Windsor, a 25-foot buffer that's also dedicated by Windsor, and a 50-foot conservation easement that will be declared by the county. The terms of the conservation area there, that will consist now of 2.5 acres, an increase of 1.1 acres, so you'll have 2.5 acres of property under conservation easement. It will be available for use for passive type recreation, nature trails, park benches, bird feeders, things like that. Disallowable uses would be parking lots, playground equipment, volleyball courts, that sort of thing. So what we're asking the board to do today is go ahead and approve the latest set of documents that have been explained to you, and in turn what will happen is that this will be overnighted tomorrow night to Tallahassee after Windsor goes ahead and executes the documents. That will be in time for the cabinet meeting coming up in December, and then the cabinet will then decide whether or not to approve the property exchange.
This also creates a buffer, I would like to point out, for Sanderling, which that's very important, that the buffer for the Sanderling residents wanted, so this also assists and accomplishes that.
175 feet will buffer the park from Sanderling development.
Okay. Sir, did you have a comment? I see a gentleman.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Todd Sutherland from Ocean Air Heights Development. I own a budding piece of property that's not part of Sanderling's, but it follows the same line running from A1A towards the ocean. And my question is the egress to the entrance, or an ingress?
Egress to Golden Sand
change?
Park. No, under the current terms, they want to try and keep it very close to the same.
What we're going to do, we're actually trying to use the same entrance. The plans that we've got now, we're using the same entrance, so as we're trying to disrupt as much of the natural habitat as we can.
The opposite of that.
Did I say trying to? Oh boy, trying not to. I forgot the word not.
Details. That's great. I also understood that in fact, I think it was mentioned in this morning's paper.
They're always correct.
The buffer was 500 feet, not 175. Did I read it wrong? I know we had a conversation to this.
Well, no, actually, we're telling you what it is right now. The paper has problems with numbers.
No, they're always right.
I get it.
They've always had a lot of problems
Fuzzy
with
math.
numbers.
Deja vu.
So it's 175 and not 500, is that right?
It's 175 feet, that's correct,
Okay.
Commissioners.
Where's your property?
Mr. Baird, when we met last in a meeting room across the way here.
Yes, I remember.
Great. You indicated that it was 500 foot was the target.
Well, right, it's 175 right now. I think if you look at where we're putting the park, this phase, and I cannot guarantee future phases, it's 500 feet.
Well, that's the key right there, isn't it?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
To answer your question, though, this is an extra 100, it was only a 50-foot buffer to the south, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it's 175.
But now it's...
But originally it was only 50.
50.
That's correct.
Yes, so it has increased substantially thanks to the state. So, I mean, that might not be the absolute.
So basically, this could change this time next year.
No, that's a
Not the 175. Currently it's up there for.
Yes,
Oh, yes.
absolutely. I picture that part getting bigger one day. I would say that would be a safe assumption.
Yeah.
Okay. And it would be, what kind of things can you build there?
The only things that we'd be able to build here would be...
Not inside the buffer, outside the buffer.
Outside the buffer, you'd be able to put in parking structures, bathhouses, bathrooms, picnic areas, things like that.
I don't think we're going to put in bathhouses, but...
well, very interesting.
Maybe showers,
Fountains with restrooms.
I get it. Cold water to rinse the salt off. Basically, what's to the north would be a safe assumption.
These are tentative plans. The agreement calls for Windsor to submit plans to the county, to work with the county recreation and public works staff, and we have the right of approval to any park design.
Was Windsor going to pay for and build the structure?
Yes, ma'am.
It's a whole new park, yes.
They are. Okay.
And
any
give us
further?
$1 million.
And give us $1 million, and also the density decreased from about 22 units to 6 or 8.
And just, I assume we're not losing any parking spaces
No, you gain.
Become better, yeah.
Actually, it's going to be, I think the impervious surface is about the same. We had to answer that question up at the state level when we went, Commissioner Lowther and I. Yeah, it's actually, we think it's going to be a better laid out park, all new equipment, and a lot more user-friendly design.
Okay, any further comment?
Thank you for your time.
Happy? Okay, now we have a motion we can act on. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? That motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay.
Chairman Newberg, may I have a clarification on who made the motion? The clerk and I did not get it.
I myself.
He and
I'll second that.
Wesley, I think.
Yeah. I myself, too.
Me, myself, and I?
Yeah.
Okay,
You're working with
under
that.
Commissioner items,
Green eggs in hand.
I have nothing, I don't think. Commissioner Gary Wheeler,
Yes, sir.
Your Excellent Chairman and Vice Chairman.
Beg your pardon?
Can I leave now?
Yeah, what I'm
You have an
asking, we reorganize, as you all know, every January, first meeting in January. And every 2 years, when we have an election, the board changes. Vice chairman acts as chairman, but there's no vice chairman. And I would like to see us, I'm suggesting that we reorganize in November instead of January, which would alleviate that problem every 2 years. And you could have it where you could have the first meeting in November, perhaps, and then election years, it could be on when the new officers would take take their position. And right now, I think it's like the third Tuesday of the month. And the ordinance could be done that way. Also, by 3 votes, I think we can change that and have election of officers in November this year, and then pursue changing the ordinance. One of the problems with this, and talking with Will, also was the fact that if, somebody could be elected chairman the first meeting in January and leave office or die or whatever, and you'd go for the whole year without a vice chairman, which and then you'd have to, if the vice chairman's not here, you've got to meet to decide who's going to be chairman, and it's cumbersome. Plus, as you know, Art, Tom, everybody, and you also appoint boards, offices, seating arrangements, and so on and so forth, which are minimal, but the bottom line is you do it in November, then you got to do it again in January. And I just think it would clean things up and make them run a lot smoother. I know the city reorganizes the day that they take office, and I think it works quite well for them. So I'm suggesting that here and looking for your input and direction.
I think that makes great common sense, and it's very convenient.
Is there a motion in here somewhere?
I'll make a motion that we do
Second.
that give direction. First, 2 motions, I guess. One motion would be that we give staff direction to redo the ordinance to make it somehow coincide with the
Intent.
November when
The organizational
new
meeting.
commissioners take on
Yeah.
the organizational meeting in November. And the second part of that motion would be that we do that on November 21st by 3 votes here. We can do that, as my understanding, but that can happen that way, is that?
Make sure.
Yeah, it would be a pending ordinance.
Yeah, we could do a pending ordinance.
Never stop us before.
And not likely to get
You could
sued
do it
over
this
this.
month.
Huh?
You could do it this month if it's a pending ordinance.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
You didn't fill a form out to where we can vote on it.
He doesn't have to, we're not under that part of the meeting.
Okay.
This is
But this is a part of the meeting the same way. I mean, this is just off-the-cuff comments here.
No, we have backup material.
We do?
Yes.
What do I do
We
with it?
did, you didn't read it.
Here. No.
Now you got
Is that the backup material? Just a minute while I read this. Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Everyone understand the motion? You ready to vote?
Who seconded it?
I did.
Oh, good, thank you.
Imagine that.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries
Good.
anonymously.
Gosh, that's on a roll.
What word is that?
Okay, President Bush.
Okay. B2, temporary sales of vehicles in county.
I've been working, I guess you have too, Art,
Yeah,
over
I
the
did.
past, year and a half probably, and I talked to Jay Campana. We started talking 6, 7, 8 months ago. I talked last year with Williamson's from Vero Beach, Lincoln Mercury, and we're going back and forth with emails and trying to decide and come up with some
Tell us
solution.
what you were talking about.
What to do. I'm getting it. About having off-site car sales where car companies come in here and rent a piece of land for the weekend and bring cars up from Fort Lauderdale or someplace and sell them and then go back out of the county. And, they don't hire employees, they don't pay taxes. It's competition for our local dealers, which I disagree with. I think that the people in the community that are living here and paying taxes and hiring people, we should support. So we had a meeting a week or so ago, and Jay invited the car dealers. I had staff there in the city of Vero Beach and the city of Sebastian, and we come up with a recommendation that we pursue this, and the cities are also going to try and do something in coordination with the county to solve this problem. And so I'm making a motion that we give direction to staff to develop an ordinance that would prohibit the temporary sale of cars unless it's basically set up for a auto sales facility. Of course, there's some flexibility here for them to come up with an ordinance that will bring back to the commission for us to vote on. We'll have public hearings, etc. But that's the direction I give staff to work on that.
That would cover the mall property? In addition
Cover
to
everything in the county.
Everything in the county.
If the cities did the same thing. Which,
you know, I have a motorhome, and occasionally you can stay in a motorhome in a Walmart, except for certain areas, Vero Beach being one of them. You cannot stay in a motorhome overnight in Walmart here in Vero Beach. And when I asked about the reason for that, is that the site plan for Walmart did not identify it as a parking place for motorhomes. Now, does the mall site plan identify it as a place to have car sales? Isn't that enough to prohibit it from there? What's our lawyer got to say?
Here's Bob.
I think that's...
So anyway, the only thing I'm looking at is a violation of people's property rights. You know, they have this piece of property and they're holding car sales. And another question, what's going to keep Mr. Campana from taking his motorhomes to another county for their shows?
Chairman Jay Campana, 1946 Windward Way, Vero Beach, 32963. Part of this conversation isn't, you know, the boat show was discussed, other car shows that take place, charitable events, et cetera, et cetera. The topic of this wasn't designed to prevent local residents and other interests from continuing to do things. This was specifically brought up to Commissioner Wheeler about out-of-town entities coming in, setting up dog and pony shows, and then leaving town, taking all the money, and really not supporting the local businesses that we do so much charitable-wise, property taxes, et cetera, that's not what this discussion was about, and not really the direction it was going to. The whole thing that I thought was important, the other dealers were important, was to make sure that you were a licensed brick-and-mortar business in town to be able to do these kinds of things. And it's just that what you get is you get these run-and-gun operations that come in. They end up in my door with problems. People have left town, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's really what the direction this went in.
Well, you and I had the same discussion, and that's what I found out, what I already know, that we couldn't do anything about it because it'd be a violation of people's rights, property rights. I don't know.
Well, it'd be a violation depending on how it was written. I don't think that you can just write it where you can't be an out-of-town person.
Right.
But we can write it across the board, and we could also, we discussed the possibility of having 2 or 4 permits limited per year. Mm-hmm. And the local dealers could buy those permits annually, and I mean, there's other ways to address this. And what we talked about is, you know, that this wouldn't apply to the guy selling his car in front of his house and this type of thing. But I think, and that's what I'm asking for, is direction for staff to come up with a working ordinance that would work under the law and be defendable.
Well, I'm in favor of that. I agree with Jay when we first talked about it. I didn't think we could do anything. Bob, do you have any input?
No, I think the way it's written now and it's proposed and is going to be fleshed out involves limiting car sales to properties that are approved for car sales in the county. So I think Will probably thinks it's more legally defensible that way because we are treating everyone the same.
How are we going to do that? How are we going to make the mall parking lot?
They're not licensed.
They wouldn't be able to do it.
They wouldn't be able to do it.
Mr. Chairman.
That's correct. So who would be able to do it that can't?
Do it now.
What sites you talking about?
Actually, existing car lots.
But no, they can do it in the mall parking lot right now if they pull a special permit of some kind, or they...
That would change.
Right, and that's what we're after.
Yeah.
And I think, Mr. Chairman, if I may, something...
Car sales then would, let me finish this line. Car sales then would only be permitted at his car lot for him and the various car lots around town.
Correct.
They're new or used, period.
And there's a possibility of having perhaps, one of the things we kicked around was having like maybe 2 events or 4 events a year where they could buy a permit to do that at the mall or someplace. But what would happen, ideally, is the local dealers would buy those permits and have them. Another, what was it, Orange?
Chairman, or Commissioner, it was, Titusville has an ordinance that's passed, and Ormond Beach has an ordinance that's passed. Now, Ormond Beach is specifically just denies everything.
Yeah.
If you don't have brick and mortar and you're not a licensed car dealer, you can't have one. Titusville's is a little bit more, it goes a little bit further, and it basically limits the number of sales, and the local dealers just buy the permits.
And I think that's the simplest, like Titusville's the simple, but that, and again, that's what I'm asking for, is give direction to staff to work this out and bring it back to us for approval.
Okay, yes.
Public hearing.
I guess
Did you make it a motion?
Yes.
He already did.
Second, who seconded?
I did.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman. Yes, what you're talking about would specifically limit the to automobiles, or would it be RVs, which I guess would be an automobile, but what about a boat?
My personal opinion is that it should go to all motor vehicles and boats. And again, we don't want to draw up anything. I think the dealers in general, again, as I don't personally represent them, but the conversations I've had and the meetings we've had with them, we would give up our personal rights to have any kind of off-show, sale ourselves in town away from our own businesses in exchange for limiting the out-of-town dealers from coming in. But more importantly is that I think it needs to be all-encompassing to, you can't treat us one or other or whatever.
Well, we discussed boats, and if we throw in boats, that's going to probably create a problem, because the City of Vero Beach and Bruce, I know, they do the boat show every year, and people do come in.
Right.
Yeah.
So we in fact, at the meeting, we discussed not including boats.
I apologize, correct. So it would be cars and motorhomes.
Well, that's what concerned me, is at the Clam Bake, they had a little boat show.
Yeah.
And it was a nice draw. It was something, it was a nice addition.
And I wouldn't want it to, for instance, when they have the annual antique car show over there.
Yeah.
And some of the people over there put for sale signs on their cars, but they're individuals. And I don't have a problem with that. And of course, that'd be a city ordinance, but we're going to try and work with the city of Sebastian, the city of Sebastian and Vero Beach to iron these things out. That's what staff.
But you're saying basically no tent sales?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And Riverside Park, over in this, of course, that's a city, but you're going to coordinate, just had a show, camper
Motorhomes.
show, motorhomes.
Oh.
They have, every month they have something over there. Now, we're going to use it absolutely as a city.
They're in agreement with us so far,
Well-
but they're going to have to do the same thing.
Jointly coordinate with everyone.
In fact, where we left it, and Bob, correct me if I'm, but where we left it was, we'll work on the ordinance,
And then
the
pass it
cities will
around.
adopt it,
Yeah.
basically, hopefully.
Okay.
I mean, they can't speak for the entire council, but that's what came out of the meeting, is would approach
Okay.
it from that direction.
How does auctions fit into this? Wasn't there someplace west of 95 where they used to hold car auctions, or is that no longer going
Allstate
on?
or one of them,
I don't know.
To my knowledge, there's no licensed automobile auctions anywhere. We have, there's one in Cocoa Beach, West Palm Beach, and Orlando, but there's nothing here locally.
You have the county selling their surplus, but I don't think that would, I don't know. Wow. That would be an automobile sale.
And others, that would only sell more than
I think
that.
sometimes we start splitting hairs, and, I kind of, we've got something that's presentable and legal, and there's a gray area like that, then put the ball in their court and let them take action.
Maybe limit auctions or...
Well, you wouldn't want to have give somebody a blatant loophole like that if that was the intent. I think we're not going to answer it all right here. I think let's move forward with it, and I have some questions, but I think we might be able to address those.
And we'll get a lot of that probably at public hearing when
Right.
the ordinance
He's
is back.
referring, The motion is referred to staff for further study and bring back a proposal. Okay, assume you're ready to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Campana, for coming in.
Thank you, Jay.
One other thing. I've been here for 3.5 hours, and you guys really never been here, and have to say that more power to you guys for doing all the stuff that you do.
I thought you were going to say, and they'll never be here again.
That too.
I have to say it was very interesting. I did enjoy it.
Thank you, Jay. Okay, special districts and boards. Emergency Services District. Emergency Services Station Number 2, leased with the City of Vero Beach. Anybody want to talk about this? Since I don't hear a motion?
It's just simply that it's the lease for the property that sits on the river. We had to have it changed because we need more property to put a new fire station. The fire station got destroyed during the hurricane. The city is requiring us to build a little bridge and a walkway that extends their Riverside Park, as well as put in a boat dock and a boat lift for the Vero Beach Police Department, and that we've done. That's going to be incorporated in the lease. Our estimates for the bridge and the walkway is about $38,000, and for the lift a maximum of $15,000, so a total of about $50,000. But we feel that that's an okay arrangement.
And pedestrian interconnectivity through there, that'd be, add to that park.
Move approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 14A2, approval of memorandum of understanding between Indian River Department of Emergency Services and Indian River County Recreation Department.
Move approval.
Second.
Who wants to address this? Cliff, you got to say.
This simply kind of makes us legal as far as lifeguards and EMT certification. And what we're doing is we're saying that this kind of, it's kind of a gray area, but we want to make sure we're covered, and they're going to be the kind of the oversight for the EMTs that are lifeguards.
Okay. Just let the public know what we're doing here. All right, we have a motion?
Yes.
Second.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. 14A3, construction services contract, Part 2 agreement with Barth Construction for the replacement of Indian River County Emergency Services Station Number 2.
I'll move approval of staff recommendation.
Moved and seconded. Joe?
Just to put a new station right there on the Riverside property. You just approved the lease. It's going to be a real nice addition to the community. It's a bigger station than most. It's got 3 bays because we're running our water rescue unit out of there, and a little more training. But it's going to be a nice facility, and hopefully it'll be something the community will be proud of.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Solid Waste Disposal District, approval of minutes of September 19, 2006.
Move approval.
Second.
Moved and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And number 2, approval of Florida Power and Light easement.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. BCC, 14C1, approval of minutes of September 19, 2006.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. 14C2, report of activities during third quarter, July through September 2006.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. The meeting is adjourned at 12:57.